authorities will make a conclusion that if the West is weak, why not to be more aggressive? And that is what we need to avoid. So that is why our political unity has a very important role to play.
Do you believe Europe is already at war?
Well, I can quote what Mark Rutte was saying. We are not at war, but we are certainly not at peace either. So we are living through a very specific period of time, which is demanding from us defense readiness approach to everything what we're doing here in Europe.
Thank you for listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. If you enjoyed today's programme, you can listen to the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was The Interview. I'm Saroja Coelho. CBC News is next.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. If you are watching us today, we are live at Portage and Maine. Well, why are we here? Because today is the day. After 46 years, the intersection right behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, is going to reopen to pedestrian traffic for the first time in 46 years. And fittingly, it's going to be a windy day from what is known as Winnipeg's, Canada's most windy corner. We're expecting winds 30 to 50 out of the today in the forecast, and we are expecting a really nice day as well ahead. So today in the city of Winnipeg right now, currently, it is mainly clear and it is 14 degrees. Thanks for joining us. This is CBC, a special edition of Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and as I mentioned, on YouTube. So let's say good morning to the team, Sierra Sanders, as well as Chloe Friesen, Darren Bernhardt, Justin Dealey, all on site with me here. Abby Adeyemi, Brad Lillies, back at CBC Manitoba, just up the way down Portage Avenue from where we are. Heather Wells is there too. She's going to start our day with our morning headlines at 3 minutes to 6. Hi, Heather.
Hi there. Good morning. Well, lots of people excited about this reopening, including at City Hall. Public Works Chair Janice Luke says reopening Portage and Maine to pedestrians is part of a wider strategy to revitalize downtown. The city made the decision to remove those barricades and install pedestrian lights after a report found it would cost $73 million to fix problems with the underground concourse, which is, of course, how people have been getting to the other side for the last 46 years. A Winnipeg cycling activist is disappointed by a proposal to put bike lanes on Wellington Crescent. A city report recommends the lanes be tested out from Academy Road to Stradbrook starting this coming spring, and that is after the city gathers some feedback from area residents. We're going to hear more from Bike Winnipeg starting at 6:30.
All right, thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to have a busy day here. We've already talked to Taylor, who says, you know what, full disclosure, he snuck by Portage and Maine already on foot a couple of times. Right now, we still have the orange barricades up, but the lines are painted, and people will get ready to go come around 10:30 today. Well, of course, today is historic, but there's a lot of concerns, especially from businesses that work underground, whether they're in the circus that will close or whether they're over in Winnipeg Square. We're going to talk to a business owner about the excitement above ground, the concern underground today. We also will have the mayor of the city of Winnipeg on CBC this morning to talk more about logistics and also to speak to how we got here. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Jerry Bruckheimer has produced pretty much every action-packed film you can name. Top Gun, Armageddon. Now he's diving into the world of F1. He'll tell you about sticking Brad Pitt behind the wheel of a real race car.
I'm not here to hold anyone's hand. I'm here to race.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Despite criticism from senators, Indigenous groups, and environmental advocates, Bill C-5 is now law. It is Prime Minister Mark Carney's major projects legislation, and it helps him uphold a promise he made to Canadians during the election. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what happens now?
Well, passing this bill, Marcia, doesn't build projects. It doesn't even approve projects, notwithstanding the dire warnings about the potentially draconian effects of what's in this bill. We aren't waking up this morning to a rules-free zone, but we will see if a better balance has been struck. The Prime Minister heard loud and clear from Indigenous leaders that his process fell short. He's committed to key conversations this summer, trying to set that right. But anytime you work fast, you break things. Paula Simons was one of many senators uncomfortable with how the Senate got squeezed by the Prime Minister's July 1st deadline.
We did our job of laying out all our concerns very clearly. And that way, if something does go sideways, we will have the somewhat dubious pleasure of being able to say, we told you so.
On the CBC's Front Burner podcast, Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson said those who think the government could have taken things slower should talk to workers who are losing their jobs right now in this trade war. The business community wanted this. Now they've got it.
This is not the
facility in Florida. He'd been in the facility in Florida. He'd been in the States since 1988. He had resident status, but Noviello also served time in prison for drug trafficking and racketeering. ICE says the cause of Noviello's death is under investigation. Doctors face specific challenges when it comes to the health of refugees and migrants. An annual conference in Halifax is focusing in on them. Physicians and nurses from all over North America will be there. But the Trump administration's approach to immigration is casting a shadow over the event. Shayna Luck has the story.
Adib Arianson will do his hair carefully and put on his good suit this weekend when he delivers a talk to healthcare workers from around the world.
I think it's very important. And
he will talk about fleeing his home country of Afghanistan as a refugee. It wasn't safe for a young, queer man after the Taliban retook the country in 2021. He crossed the border to Tajikistan, where the stress put him in hospital for a few weeks.
It was constant panic attacks. It was fear. It was just shock.
Some doctors at this 500-person conference say that fear is still following their patients.
They come into the office, they have increased stress, increased anxiety.
Dr. Catherine McKenzie teaches at Yale and treats refugee families. She's worried and saddened after the U.S. suspended refugee admissions and slashed their health programs.
Obviously, I'm a doctor. I want people whom I see as patients to be healthy, mentally healthy and physically healthy.
Conference organizers say they're seeing half the usual attendees because some delegates are afraid they'll be hassled on re-entry to the States. And they plan to publish a statement out of this conference showing support for refugees and migrants everywhere. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Japan carried out its first execution in 3 years.
本日、白石貴弘の死刑を執行いたしました。
The country's justice minister announcing Takehiro Shiraishi was hanged for murder and murdering 9 people in 2017. He was called the Twitter killer for the way he lured his victims. Many of them had posted suicidal thoughts on social media. Shiraishi offered to help them with their pain. He persuaded them to come to his apartment. He then strangled and dismembered them. Most of his victims were young women. The clock is ticking on Donald Trump's major tax cut and spending bill. The U.S. president wants to sign it into law by July 4th.
If the bill doesn't pass, there'll be a 68% tax increase. Think of that, 68%, which would be the largest in history by about 40 points.
That is Trump speaking last evening at a White House event promoting the bill, but Congress may not meet the president's deadline. After narrowly passing the House earlier this month, Trump's signature bill is now facing hurdles and opposition in the Senate. The CBC's Karen Pauls is in Washington. And Karen, what is the delay?
There are disagreements between Republicans in the Senate. Some are up for re-election in next year's midterms, and there are concerns about the national debt and deep cuts to Medicaid. Here are Republican Senators Josh Hawley and Rand Paul.
We can't close rural hospitals. That's my message.
I'm fiscally conservative no matter who is president, and I just can't support something that makes the deficit worse.
Meanwhile, Democrats don't want to cut Medicaid and food stamps to offset trillions of dollars in tax breaks. This is Senator Chuck Schumer.
It is morally bankrupt to ask working and middle Americans to bankroll tax breaks for billionaires at a time they're struggling to pay for groceries and rent.
Republicans have a slim majority in the Senate, and they'd like enough support for it to pass with a simple majority by tomorrow. But then it still has to go back to the House. They'll have to review all of the changes made, and they won't have a lot of time before they have to vote on it.
There is a Canadian angle to this as well. What is it?
Yeah, the federal government has expressed concern about a so-called revenge tax of up to 20% on investors from countries deemed to be imposing unfair taxes on U.S. companies. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has asked House and Senate Republicans to remove this from that so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. There are suggestions a deal may have been reached, and this may help Ottawa with the incoming digital services tax, something Canada's finance minister also welcomes.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Karen Pauls in Washington. Matcha, the bright green powdered tea with an earthy flavor, has become so popular that now there's a global shortage. That's threatening a delicate supply chain and an age-old Japanese tradition. Jenna Benchitrit reports.
At this cafe in Toronto, matcha makes up a third of drink sales, says manager Nadia Semenechenko.
200 matchas a day. It's quite a bit of whiskey, I would say.
Matcha. But what started as a social media frenzy over the tea has turned into a global shortage. The ripple effects felt across the supply chain.
We started introducing new suppliers to keep up with the demand.
In Japan, matcha is used in traditional tea ceremonies. It's now served almost everywhere, even your nearest Starbucks, and often mixed into lattes or pastries. But Semenechenko doesn't recommend using high-grade matcha that way.
It's like, if you buy a really expensive whiskey and put it in whiskey and Coke.
We're going to be making you a matcha drink with these ingredients. While the fervor started online, content creators like China LaRoom think it's gone too far. She pared back on her own TikTok matcha recommendations.
It's becoming sold out everywhere. I could not find the same matcha brand or products that I like.
Some Japanese tea makers are capping exports to foreign buyers. Jason Eng, who manages business partnerships for Kamatani Tea, says his company will have to raise prices.
There's no way around it due to the demand.
He expects your matcha order will be pricier during next year's harvest. Jenna Benchitrit, CBC News, Toronto.
Nothing changes at the red lights.
We hate to prove the Watchmen wrong in their own hometown, but today something is changing at the red lights, specifically at Portage and Maine. The landmark intersection in Winnipeg is reopening to pedestrians. The city erected concrete barriers at the intersection more than 40 years ago. That forced pedestrians to use an underground concourse. The city hopes this will help revitalize Winnipeg's downtown. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. If you like the World Report podcast, follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa with a special edition of Information Radio. We are live at Portage and Maine. We're right outside of the MMF building, which is under construction, and so is the intersection behind me. But not for long, because these barricades behind me that have been up for 46 years will come down today, and that means that pedestrians will be able to cross here for the first time in decades. So today, in our special show, in the first hour of the show, we're going to talk more about how we got here. We're going to walk you through the politics that led to this moment, so stay tuned for that in just moments. Also, we couldn't resist. We dipped into the archives. We've got a story about one of those parties that was connected to our Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and there was a concert. A lot of gatherings here at Portage and Maine. It's a place of celebration and sorrow. It's a place where we've been coming together as Winnipeggers for so many years, so we'll have some archive. Plus, you might know them from their podcast called One Great History, but they've got an upcoming book out about Portage and Maine. Stay tuned. We'll talk to the co-authors. So that's all coming up just in this hour of the show. Later, the mayor will be here. Dancing Gabe, who's known in Winnipeg, was already here, getting ready to cross the street. And I'm noticing Winnipeggers, some of them have snuck across already, but officially the intersection, in case you're wondering, won't open until we understand about 10:30 this morning. So we're outside the MMF building, and then, of course, we are behind us. We can see the whole intersection. It's a beautiful day in Winnipeg. We're going to get into the weather forecast in a moment. First, let's go to Heather Wells, who's here with our news headlines. us.
Good morning. Yes, and there is a lot of hope over at Winnipeg City Hall about this reopening of Portage and Maine to pedestrians. Public Works Chair Janice Luke says it's going to make it easier for people to move around downtown. She also expects we are now going to start seeing more people on the streets. So we'll hear from her coming up. More changes as well to how others get around, not just pedestrians, but people who use the bus. Winnipeg Transit is about to go through the biggest change in its history. A new network goes into effect on Sunday, altering just about every bus route in this city. We'll tell you about it in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Abby, we could not have picked a better day to be out here, quite honestly. We're set up on the sidewalk outside the MMF building, and the sky is already blue, just some wispy cloud. It's got that little bit of a coolness in the air, but that's not a bad thing. It's going to get kind of hot later, right?
That's true, Marcy. It's going to be warm and humid there across most of the regions today. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. There's a good chance of showers later, especially in the northern part of the province. In Winnipeg right now, 14 degrees under, that cloudy sky we're seeing there. The sun already breaking through in some areas. Things will start to clear up. We're heading for a very wonderful high of 27 today with the winds coming from the south. The clouds will return tonight and there's a chance of showers or thunderstorms in the forecast. Similar conditions we're seeing in the southern part from the Parkland all the way down to the Interlake region. We're seeing temperatures between 11 and 17 degrees. While up north, Marcy, we have rain in Churchill and Thompson at this time. Temperatures hovering near 17 degrees up there. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 14, heading for a high of 27.
I want to ask you about traffic, Abby. Here at Portage and Maine, obviously it's morning, so there's traffic. But I think traffic volumes, you never know with today. The long weekend isn't technically Monday, it's Tuesday. But I think a lot of people might have taken Monday off. So I think it could be a little bit quiet. Are you hearing anything yet?
Nothing yet on my end. The phone's not rang, but I'm just waiting for any call that comes through to the studio here. And I will let you know what the situation is like on the road. So just give us a call on the traffic line when you see anything, but nothing to report now. The commuting line is 788-3093.
So this intersection where we broadcast from today, Portage and Maine, is embedded in the story of not just Winnipeg, but really of Canada. The crossroads of the country. Here we sit at one of the windiest corners, and it's going to be windy today. Despite being inaccessible to pedestrians for 46 years, it somehow continued to make headlines in Canada. Of course, today, the big day where people can walk across. Those barricades that force pedestrians below ground into the labyrinth of tunnels have already been torn down. Behind me, there's just the orange barricades that are temporary, and they will go away later this morning. There's new painting the crossing lines on the street. So we wanted to start the show today with reminding us, and for those of you that might not know this story, how we got to this point, especially after years of public opposition to reopening Portage and Maine. The CBC's Darren Bernhardt is here to walk us through, or even across, the decades to understand the politics and policies along the way. Hi, Darren. Thanks for being up early with us.
Oh, no, my pleasure, Marcy.
So it's been a long road, so to speak. How did this finally happen?
Well, kind of like how the intersection started in the first place, against all odds. When Henry McKenney opened a store at this corner, well, actually, the corner right across from us, we're looking over at the BMO building. That was the corner where he opened a store in 1862, and he was ridiculed for it being too far from Upper Fort Garry, which is just south of us, and that was really the center of the settlement. And people thought he was too far from the river.
Why
he was
would
too
you
far
put it
from,
here?
Yeah, like, why are you going far away from where everybody is? But here's what historian Gordon Goldsborough had to say.
The center of Winnipeg back then was very definitely not at the corner of Portage and Maine. It was, of course, the Upper Fort Garry. That was the center of government. It was the center of commerce. It was the center of settlement. Everybody who was anybody was at Fort Garry.
Obviously, it worked out for him, despite all the naysayers to his choice, Darren.
Yeah, absolutely. Within 7 years, there were 33 buildings clustered around this corner. Everybody started to follow what McKenney had done because he had drawn in what were originally these ox cart and traveling paths had made it a very popular corner. And in a thread that kind of runs through our history when we talk about reopening Portage and Maine now, the vast majority was against that, and yet here we are.
Right? It's like it just succeeds despite all odds. So we got to put our bell bottoms on for the next part. We got to go beyond McKenney and the dusty roads when there wasn't even street signs here saying Portage and Maine. Let's get us into the 1970s. Let's remind people why they closed this intersection to pedestrians in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. So in the 60s, everything was starting to move to the suburbs. The residents were moving to suburbs. Suburban malls were opening up. So Winnipeg's core was in decades of decline in economic growth, stagnant development. Something major had to happen. And in the mid-1970s, the Trizac Corporation promised something the city could not ignore. They promised to build 2 towers, a hotel, and actually this bank is one of them, but right behind me here at the corner, they promised to make this development with an underground retail space that would double as a heated, sheltered crossing for pedestrians trying to get across Portage and Maine. Who wants to cross Portage and Maine? Not all of that happened. We know one of the towers only got developed a few years ago.
Yeah.
So that project was in. But yeah, the city saw it as stimulating development, but also answering another problem. Since the 60s, they had been studying traffic problems. The growing traffic, they felt pedestrians and vehicles could no longer mix at Portage and Maine. So the deal with Trizac was to keep the corner closed for 40 years as of February 1979 when it opened and redirect people into the subterranean mall.
The 40-year deal.
Yeah, the 40-year deal.
So what went wrong? And when did the talk of reopening the intersection first begin? Because people who think this is modern history, it actually began a while ago.
Oh, like you say, it's been a long road. A few things happened. I mean, the underground crossings, they're cumbersome, a lot of confusing. People didn't know where to go. I mean, Portage and Maine was a place that people had heard about across Canada, and they'd want to come see it, and they couldn't get across. Getting into there was inaccessible to some people with mobility issues. There was concerns about safety in the dark and often empty corridors and corners. So yeah, as you mentioned, there's been polls conducted since at least 1997 on public opinion around taking down the barricades and letting people walk again. But they've always resulted in a vast majority being opposed. Mayor Glenn Murray held a design competition in 2004 in an effort to build support to reopen it, but property owners around the intersection resisted. And his successor, Sam Cates, put the entire thing on the shelf. It just sort of vanished for a while, but it surfaced again in 2014 when mayoral candidate Brian Bowman said he would open it again if reelected, and he was. So he had the city study its feasibility. But that took years. It took years to look at the amount of infrastructure and changes you had to do. And by then, it was another election campaign. And so they put it as a plebiscite on the civic election. Would people be in favor of reopening it? The answer was a strong no, and Bowman honored it.
Yeah, 65. It was, as you said, non-binding plebiscite. 65% of people said no, and yet here we sit.
Yep.
Actually, the last time we did a live show here was 2018, just ahead of that plebiscite and ahead of that election. Brian Bowman was here, so were all the other candidates. They all had different opinions about this. Remind us why people were so opposed to what's happening today.
Well, so Probe Research in one of those polls that they had, or probably all of the polls, the main concern for people was traffic gridlock and their commute times being extended. But I asked urban planner Gino DiStasio about that exact thing, and he said the reason really is a mystery to him.
What is the big deal if this one extra intersection opened or closed in relation to the entirety of the complex transportation system and network that we've developed over the last 150 years in the city of Winnipeg?
So let's get back to the main question. How are we here reopening it if people said no so many times?
Yeah, just like back in 1862, Portage and Maine does what Portage and Maine wants. Council learned early in 2024. I mean, leading up to 2018, they even knew then that there was going to be some infrastructure issues. There was aging that had to be taken care of. But it was in 2024 that they really learned the weight of the bill to fix that. It was $73 million. To fix that. It was the membrane that protects the underground concourse was leaking. To repair that would cost $73 million, take about 4 to 5 years of traffic delays. So, and even if they did that, it had a lifespan of 40 years. The work would have to be repeated in the future. So Mayor Scott Gillingham put a motion forward to reopen it, this time without going to the public, and in March 2024, Council voted 11-3 in agreement.
So if $73 million was the cost for all of that work, let's remind also people, because I know this figure is a lot less, Council has said to make it pedestrian friendly, what's happening today is going to cost what?
Well, just under 17 million.
Yeah.
So what we've seen here, taking down the barricades, changing the curbing, putting up the lights, and all the infrastructure that they need to get it so people can cross is just under 17 million. But I will say that the cost to decommission the underground concourse, which will happen once it's not safe for people, still remains to be determined.
Yeah. We actually had a guest on this morning, even though City Council said that's going, the circus underground, still holding out hope because business owners down there are pretty worried, I think. Let's take a look down Portage Avenue for just a moment, though, because it was originally thought, let's figure out where we are, right? The Forks is over here, to the east of us, to the west of us, the full downtown. It was also originally thought, even in 1979, closing Portage and Main to people crossing would save downtown. So what's the thinking about, ironically, I guess, how reopening this to pedestrian traffic could affect downtown?
Yeah, isn't that funny, right? They were thinking, it's stagnant, downtown's dying, we'll close it up and we'll save downtown by bringing people below the ground. But, the hope is for some that it will bring more pedestrians and perhaps ignite development to some of the vacant storefronts. But DeStasio says that's a lot to expect.
You have to just remember what it is. It's just people crossing the street. That isn't going to transform downtown. I don't think it's going to take away, but, I do think there's more benefits to having people above ground.
He does think, though, that's far better than confusing people in the underground maze. And actually, let's put this bluntly, DeStasio thinks the whole topic and its years of debates are kind of silly.
Simply put, I really think it's going to be the most interesting non-event event in Winnipeg's downtown history.
I heard that from a lot of people, but I'll tell you what, I posted about the reopening and boom, there's nearly 200 comments on my Facebook page. So whether you want it to open or not, whether you're happy today or you're disappointed, there's no doubt that we're making history and we're going to see what comes next.
Exactly.
Darren, thanks for setting us up with the complicated long history that led us to this moment. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcy. It's I'm happy to be here on this day.
It's cool, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Go get some photos.
Okay.
Darren Bernhardt, our colleague at CBC Manitoba, great way to start the show. He's a reporter and an online producer and reporter. And also mentioned Darren's got 2 books out that are best-selling. They're about history and Winnipeg, so that's relevant to our conversation. If you want to read a story, though, about the path of Portage and Maine to our website, on our website, go to cbc.ca/Manitoba, and you can weigh in on how you feel about reopening to pedestrians by calling 788-3205, or better yet, come on down. We're outside the MMF building, and talk to us this morning.
What's your Canada thing? What makes you proud? What makes your patriotic soul sing? Join us at the Forks on Canada Day and tell us. CBC is bringing a digital display where you can get a picture, play our Canada Day quiz, and shout your Canada thing loud and proud. Look for CBC, proud sponsor of Canada Day at the Forks. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
6:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcuso. We are live today at Portage and Maine, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I've been joined by a very special guest. This is Dancing Gabe, known as Dancing Gabe Lanois, who's come here. How are you doing?
How are you doing, Marcy?
I'm doing very well. Tell us about your sign. What have you got?
Oh, I got the...
What's on it? Hold it up here. We got a camera in front of you there, too.
Hang on a minute. Oh, there you go.
Perfect. So it says, "Make Portage and Maine great again."
Yeah.
I love this. And then you got all the Bomber logos and the Winnipeg logos.
Yeah.
Some Canada Day stuff.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today about this reopening?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah?
It's about time. It's about damn time.
Yeah. So why do you think it'll be good for Winnipeg, Gabe?
I think it'll be awesome to revitalize downtown Winnipeg.
Yeah, just have more foot traffic. I'm glad you're here at this time, because if you can stay for 2 minutes, we got some tape to play. So did you ever, back in the day, Gabe, go to one of those street parties? Remember Glenn Murray used to shut down Portage and Maine?
I remember in the 2000s.
Yeah, that's right. And then lots of times for the Bombers, you're wearing your Bomber jersey.
Yeah.
Did you ever go when the Bombers celebrated Grey Cup, and did you ever come down here for those parades and
I did in 2021
Yeah.
with my sister.
We got some sound from some of that because we thought it would be cool to hear. No matter how you feel about the reopening of Portage and Maine to pedestrians, as I mentioned, this is a moment in our city's history. Just like it was 46 years ago when it closed. So along the way, moments of protest, sorrow, and celebration have brought people here to this intersection. 25 years ago, Winnipeg's mayor was Glenn Murray. He was behind something else that was divisive. Concerts and street parties that Gabe and I are talking about, they would happen here at Portage and Maine. They saw the intersection closed. There were stages that would go up between the high-rise buildings behind me this morning. So we went into our archives. We found a story about one of those parties, and this one actually we're going to hear is connected to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Have a listen and a watch on our YouTube channel.
They weren't all Bomber fans, but the 50,000 people who plugged Portage and Maine yesterday were enthusiastic to get behind the cause. A free concert to rally support for a team that in recent years has struggled both on the field and at the box office.
When you lose 3 or 4 years in a row, then the fans are going to lose a little confidence in the team. And I think that this year, with this kind of a start, I mean, it's just a great idea by Glenn Murray to get something like this going. And
Newfoundland's Great Big Sea headlined a free bill, also featuring Chilliwack, Amanda Stott of Brandon, and an appearance by Bomber kicker Troy Westwood. The concert was organized by the city as a wrap-up to the Bombers' season ticket drive. The team narrowly met its season ticket goal of $16,000. When all the bills are in, the cost of the show to taxpayers could be as high as $250,000. But the mayor expects it to be much less.
The corporate sponsorship's outstanding, and Winnipeggers volunteer like no other group of people. If it hadn't been for the donations and the volunteers, we couldn't have done this. So I'm thrilled. Thank you, Winnipeg. Blue Bombers, Blue Bombers, Blue Patrick.
Oh, when Winnipeg Mayor Glenn Murray's street parties happened here at Portage and Maine, and they used to shut everything down. That one was celebrating the Bombers on a big stage and closing the intersection to do it. Now, those parties died in 2004, despite bringing about 50,000 Winnipeggers into the downtown, which was great for some businesses. Some others on the side streets around here complained that business went down during the get-together downtown weekends, as they were known, with traffic snarls and parking issues. A weekend closure to party here at Portage and Maine also came with a price tag of about $300,000. So there was a lot of criticism fiscally of those parties. We're going to ask the mayor, though, now that Portage and Maine is reopening to pedestrians, what he envisions for gatherings at this intersection and what that might mean. I'm sure he's not going to be bringing those parties back, given the fiscal situation, but we'll talk to him. He's going to join us after 7. So, Gabe, what was it like hearing that? You were probably at that party.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Right. Were you at the Bomber game last night?
Yes, we won against Edmonton, 36-23.
That was the score last night. Thanks for popping down. Yeah, have you crossed the street yet? Are you going to cross later when it's officially open?
Yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
I walked Portage Main when I was 15 years old.
Really? That's your earliest memory?
Yeah, from the late 70s.
Wow. So you remember. Not a lot of people remember when it was open to foot traffic, but you do.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Gabe.
Thank you, Marcy.
Gabe likes to be part of our historic moments, and so he should be. That is Gabe Lanois, but known as Dancing Gabe, here in his Bomber jersey, celebrating the reopening of Portage and Maine. He says he's pretty excited about it. He sees it as a good thing that could revitalize our downtown. How do you feel about it? 788-3205 is where you can weigh in. Well, we're live here for the morning. Thanks so much for being with us. We do have news of the day to get to, though, so we'll get to the news in a second here. Just want to mention that in business news coming up this morning, Phil DeMont will be here. It looks like Washington has pulled its so-called, quote, revenge tax, so we'll find out more about why that's important. And more on the forecast and your current traffic situation coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 14 degrees, a mix of sun and clouds, windy and humid for Friday. A high today of 27, that wind gusting to 50. The humidex today, 32, and that humidity will be with us through the weekend. Well, as we've been hearing, it is finally here, the day Winnipeg pedestrians get to see the light of day. They can walk above ground from one side of the street to the other at the city's most famous intersection. Portage and Maine has been closed to pedestrians since 1979. After 46 years of subterranean scrambling and several months of road work, people officially can cross above ground starting at 10:30 this morning. Gino DeStasio is a professor of urban geography at the University of Winnipeg. He says it's frustrating the barriers at Portage and Maine stayed in place so long.
What is the big deal if this one extra intersection opened or closed in relation to the entirety of the complex transportation system and network that we've developed over the last 150 years in the city of Winnipeg?
Reopening Portage and Maine is expected to help all downtown. Public Works Chair Janice Luke says it's part of a wider strategy to revitalize downtown.
We are really focused on downtown. We're really trying to put vibrancy and more people in downtown by accelerating housing, doing improvements to streets, and this is just one tool in the toolkit to make downtown more exciting.
The city made the decision to remove those barricades at Portage and Maine and install pedestrian lights after a report found it would cost $73 million to fix problems with the underground concourse. You can read all about Portage and Maine and its history by heading to our website this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, bus riders, brace yourselves. Winnipeg Transit is about to change its entire route network overnight. On Sunday, buses will switch to a new system, which the city says will offer more frequent service along major routes. Bjorn Radstrom is Transit's manager of service delivery.
The big thing is people need to understand where to catch the bus and which routes to take because everything is changing. By overhauling the entire route network, pretty much nothing is going to remain the same after Sunday.
With the new system, buses will come at least every 10 to 15 minutes on major routes. Radstrom encourages people to try planning their routes using the new network by using a variety of tools, including Navigo, the Winnipeg Transit app, and Google Maps. Rural municipalities say emergency rooms are becoming harder to count on. Doctors Manitoba expects only 20 of 95 rural ERs will be reliably open 24/7 this summer. Glenboro South Cyprus Deputy Mayor Ed Bedford says that's not a surprise because staff are stretched thin.
I hate to say it, but it's kind of the reality of how things are nowadays, and I don't think you're ever going to see 24-hour ER service in the smaller places anymore. I don't think that, they just don't have the staff to do it.
This is the fourth summer Doctors Manitoba has issued a warning about ER coverage in rural parts of the province. Advocates for victims of human trafficking say the crime is surging. This month, RCMP charged a Portage La Prairie couple who are hotel owners with human trafficking. It relates to labor trafficking involving 4 employees. 3 women and 1 man from India started working at the Howard Johnson in Portage La Prairie over the past year. Police say the victims worked 15-hour days and were paid well under the minimum wage. They were also threatened with deportation. Diana Bussey works with victims of labor trafficking, and she is with the Salvation Army.
We continue to see an increase of human trafficking, and this past year a significant increase, particularly for the purposes of labor trafficking.
Bussey says the best way to prevent labor trafficking is to make Manitobans more aware of the problem. An activist says a pilot to put bike lanes on Wellington Crescent should be implemented sooner. If approved by City Council, the changes could come into effect next spring. The proposed timeline would have the city gathering feedback from community members first. Ian McCausland at Bike Winnipeg says it should be the other way around.
For some reason, for Wellington, it's the reverse. They're going to get all the feedback about how much people might not like the idea and then install the pilot. And it feels like it's almost backwards that way.
The pilot from Academy Road to Stradbrook Avenue will also lower speeds to 40 kilometers an hour. Advocates like McCausland had previously called for a 30-kilometer limit. Cyclist Rob Jenner was hit and killed by a speeding driver on Wellington 1 year ago. Well, 3 games, 3 wins for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Down the field, Dembski!
Dembski's ridiculous. That was the second quarter as the Big Blue beat the Edmonton Elks 36-23. Not only do the Bombers remain unbeaten, but they won in front of the seventh straight sellout crowd at Princess Auto Stadium. The Blue and Gold now hit the road, heading to Calgary to kick off against the Stampeders on July 3rd. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Love hearing that sound from last night. It was a beautiful night for football. It's a beautiful morning to get up for today as well. With your Friday morning forecast, here's Abby Adeyemi.
Good morning once again. We are looking at a warm and humid day across the province today. Mix of sun and clouds, some showers here and there. Winnipeg at this point 17, heading to a high of 24. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. We're seeing temperatures hover around 12 and 11 degrees at this point. Also warming up to 27. But down south, we're going to be feeling that humidity close to 32 degrees. So it's going to be a hot one today. Brandon sits at 11, warming to 27. Dauphin is at 16, warming close to 29. Gimli is at 11 degrees, warming close to 27. And we look at conditions in Flin Flon at this time, 14 degrees. We saw some foggy conditions earlier. That's still going to clear. Showers and thunderstorm possible today, high near 25. Thompson is at 16, mostly cloudy at this time. We saw some showers earlier, but now we're seeing mild winds, warming up to 25. And in Churchill, we still have light rain showers at 16 degrees, warming close to 19. Winnipeg, we are at 14 at this time, warming close to a high of 27. Nothing on the traffic line yet, Marcy, but if you see anything out there, let us know. 788-3092.
It's 3093. Just a small little correction there.
93.
Thanks, Abby. I'll tell you what we're about to see in traffic. My next guest, who wants to be the first person to cross Portage and Maine, well, maybe not right away, but she's going to wait till later, I think. So here live with me, we pulled Andrea Kahuch onto the air. She's here with Arby. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see maybe his head poke up under the table. He's a beautiful black lab shepherd. He is Andrea's service dog. How are you doing this morning?
Very good.
Good. So is that true? You're hoping maybe you'll be the first one to cross?
Well, I should be. I'll be the oldest one, I think.
How are you feeling about the intersection reopening to foot traffic?
I have one question.
Okay.
What took so long?
Yeah. So obviously when we had this plebiscite in 2018, you would have, if you voted, you would have voted for it.
Yes.
Why do you think it should be open as it is happening today?
I didn't agree that it was closed
in the first place.
And I think Winnipeg is one of the last cities that would close everything like this, and we're finally coming into the trend with all the other cities. Like, think of New York, Paris, even Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver.
Yeah.
This is the iconic intersection in Winnipeg. It should be open. It should never have been closed.
Do you? You're alluding to back in the day. So do you remember 1979?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm older than you.
and what do you remember about what the city felt like?
I think it just was divided, and I don't agree what the council did. They didn't really, as I recall, ask the public so much. They just went and did it, right?
Back then.
Yeah.
So. And if they would have asked you then, you would have still said?
I was in high school. I would have said no.
So if you are you going to stick around until they officially allow you to open? Are you going to come back? I guess you're just out walking Arby right now.
We have to go for a walk, get a coffee, and we'll come back.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a little time on CBC.
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So that's Andrea Kahuch and Arby, her service dog, a black lab shepherd, here, and hoping to be maybe the first ones that'll officially cross Portage and Maine. We know the lines are painted, people have been sneaking across, but the barricades are still up here this morning, so those will come down later. We do have to get to some news of the day. It's 20 to 7 on CBC on our special broadcast, but we do have the business report with us. Phil DeMont is here with us. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
So it looks like Washington, let's go there, they pulled their so-called revenge tax. Why is this important?
The tax would have cost Canadians who invest in the U.S. billions in new taxes, but it also would have hurt the American economy. On Thursday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent asked Republicans in the Senate to yank this provision from the White House's tax bill. This is the legislation that Donald Trump wants to sign by July 4th. Bessent said the U.S. and the other countries that met at the G7 summit in Alberta came to a joint understanding on taxes that he says will protect American interests. What it means is the tax on foreigners with U.S. holdings is dead in the water. The original proposal was to make non-Americans pay American tax on their U.S. investments. Canada, for example, if you're Canadian, you pay only 15% tax on your holdings south of the border because of existing tax treaties. The proposal would have pushed that up to 50%, would have cost us $80 billion over 7 years. Washington wanted to impose the tax if your country, the foreign country, treated American corporations unfairly, which they kind of defined very widely. In Canada's case, they were upset about the digital tax on streaming services, but the tax would have also made the U.S. less attractive to foreign investors because it would have increased the cost of investing there. Would have cost the American economy $100 billion in reduced foreign investment, and that would have reduced the value of the U.S. dollar. It's already down more than 10% this year because of all the worries about tariffs. If this tax proposal hadn't been scrapped, the greenback would have dropped even more in value.
Why is that? Pardon me, we're moving to another story here. More numbers are showing Canada's job market softening. Let's go there, actually. What's the latest on that story, Phil?
Yeah, this is a second-tier number, but it's fewer job openings than there once were. It means there's a growing number of unemployed Canadians battling over fewer vacancies than in previous years. Statistics Canada dropped out numbers on Thursday, basically 500,000 job vacancies in Canada right now. Marcy, sounds like a lot, but back in 2022, there were 1 million vacancies. Okay, it was a slower economy, but there's more unemployed now, 1.5 million versus 1 million 3 years ago. So you had, back then you had one unemployed person for every job opening. Now you have 3 for every vacant spot. It means basically that there's more competition. And part of the trouble is the unemployment has gone up. So Canada, compared to last December, unemployment rolls up 5.5% by the end of May. That's comparable to the U.S., but it just means that both economies are slowing.
How are the markets looking?
Right now, there's talk of the U.S. extending tariffs. So, the tariff pause. So, France up 1%, Germany and the U.K. up more than 0.5%. Weak data out of China, though. Shanghai and the Hong Kong market both down. Oil up 25 cents, $65.49 a barrel. And the Canadian dollar, it's down, but only slightly, trading at 73.23 cents U.S.
All right, thanks a lot, Phil. Appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Phil DeMont filling in for Crystal Ramlichan with our business news on CBC. All right, Winnipeg, are you ready? We're live at Portage and Maine with CBC. A special day, a special show today, 46 years in the making. Pedestrians are now going to be able to walk across Portage and Maine later this morning. We are outside of the MMF building, just right with Portage and Maine behind us here. And a beautiful day here, light blue sky, a little bit of wind. It's going to get windier later, and it's also going to get warmer later as well. Right now, Winnipeg is sitting partly cloudy and 14 degrees. You knew that if we were going to come to Portage and Maine, we were going to play this. Yeah, that is Prairie Town. And what you might not know, though, is there is a different version of this tune, and we actually are going to play the full version of that. Maybe a little early to rock out with Randy Bachman. We want to mention, though, a couple ties to Randy Bachman and the Guess Who here at this corner. So, of course, they're associated with Portage and Maine, not just because of the lyrics in that tune, but they also filmed, the band did a CBC special here in 1979, the year this intersection closed, called Portage and Maine. Burton Cummings had guest appearances from Randy Bachman at the time, from Bobby Hull, who historically signed at this corner for the Jets, and a lot of others. So there's a mural of the band here in the city that cements their connection here and to this location. So they're also linked to Portage and Maine. You might have seen that picture of the band with Portage and Maine behind them. Someone's going through here this morning. So we have pulled actually the new version of the tune. So Prairie Town was re-recorded by Neil Young and Randy Bachman. Bit of a country version, a little bit of a softer flow. And this one was released in 1993.
Born and raised in a prairie town, just a kid full of dreams. We didn't have much but a radio. Music came from places we'd never been. Growing up in a prairie town, learning to drive in the snow. Not much to do, so you start a band. Soon you've gone as far as you can go. Winter nights are long, summer days are gone. Portage and Maine, 50 below. Springtime melts the snow, rivers overflow. Portage and Maine, 50 below. All the bands in a prairie town try to outdo the next in line. Learning records out of Liverpool. Dreams of England on their minds. On the other side of Winnipeg, Neil and the Squires played the zone. Then he went to play for a while in Thunder Bay. He never looked back and he's never coming home. Winter nights are long, summer days are gone. Portage and Maine, 50 below. Springtime melts the snow, rivers overflow. Portage and Maine, 50 below.
Well, a lot of people are asking what we're going to do when it's 50 below now that you can't go underground, or you won't be able to, and get underneath Portage and Maine. Of course, we're playing that tune because today's the day. Portage and Maine reopens to pedestrian foot traffic, but also just because we pulled some tunes that feature Portage and Maine, like Prairie Town. That's the country version, Neil Young and Randy Bachman. It was released in February 2020, and I mistakenly said 1993 on the way in. That was the release date for the original rock version of Prairie Town. Time right now is 12 minutes to 7 o'clock on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Thank you so much for being with us on a special edition of Information Radio. The best part of my job is sitting, or sometimes standing, but today sitting, in the moments of our local history in a town where I was born and raised. Now, I don't remember walking across Portage and Maine. I was 5 years old in 1979. But I have to say, I'm thinking that today I'm probably going to snap a pic walking across once it's open later. And I think a lot of Winnipeggers just might be. Also, though, remember that this is contentious because there was a plebiscite in 2018. 65% of people voted no, don't reopen it to pedestrian traffic. So we're going to see what happens with all of the things that will come with this change. The mayor of the city of Winnipeg will join us to talk about that, some of the history, but also some of the logistics. And that is coming up right after 7 o'clock here. But right now, something special. Earlier this hour, we heard about how we got to this day when it comes to the politics and policies from 79 and stretching across 4 decades. But what about the cultural history of Portage and Maine? Why do we care about it? My next guests are the authors of Portage and Maine, How an Iconic Intersection Shaped Winnipeg's History, Politics, and Urban Life. Sabrina Janke and Alex Judge also have a podcast you might have heard called One Great History, and they're here now. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
So how are you feeling about today?
It's really exciting to see it actually happen. I was working downtown when the plebiscite took place, and I remember standing at 201 Portage and looking at the Bank of Montreal and being like, oh, it'd be nice if I could just walk across to that.
Yeah, and how about you? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, really excited. It's been a long time coming.
Sabrina, why did you write a book about Portage and Maine?
I think we had been talking about writing a book on Winnipeg history for a while, but doing a full history of the city was really broad, and it was hard to figure out what to choose and what to talk about. But Portage and Maine is a really nice sort of lens to filter Winnipeg history. We've always placed some kind of meaning on it. So you can look at whatever meaning we put on the intersection and then talk about why that's what the city was trying to be.
How is the story told, Alex?
It's told chronologically, so it's taking us all the way from, the conjunction of the rivers as a place of trading, Nestawaya, to the very first businesses, and all the way up to the reopening.
Now, we heard, I hope people are watching on YouTube, because we have a whole bunch of pictures from the book and different things that my colleague Bradley Lees is going to roll through while we're talking. But earlier this hour, my colleague Darren Bernhardt, who is, like you guys, just a lover of all things local history, was talking about Henry McKenney and the store earlier this hour. So back at that time, this would have been what? Like dirt?
It just a field, basically, with two paths that crossed.
Okay, so there was still an intersection of sorts here.
There was, though the exact location of it changed year by year depending on the level of the rivers, right?
Got it.
Where it was flooding, they'd kind of choose the area that wasn't going to be covered in water as Portage Avenue.
Got it. So that's part of why they thought he was, as Darren was alluding to, and you write about this in the book too, why they thought he was crazy to build his store here.
Yeah, absolutely. They said, either the winds or the waters are going to take it, and they were wrong.
And at that time, besides having nothing around here except for his store, obviously there was no signage. There was nothing really, right?
No, there was Fort Garry a little ways away. McKenney actually built his store such that he could look at Fort Garry, have kind of a nice view. But yeah, other than that, there weren't a lot of structures here.
Sabrina, what are some of your favorite things in the book? And why don't we start? I'm going to prompt you with this, because I understand you got some pretty rockin' political cartoons that are really fun.
Yeah, I do. The debate about closing the intersection in the 1970s was really, really interesting. So two Tribune reporters, Jan Kaminsky and Val Warrior, were really opposed to closing it. So that's where a lot of the political cartoons come from, is the repeated commentary on what does it mean to have a intersection that's not friendly to the public. So they started calling it going underground like gophers. Warrior proposed closing the intersection to cars because people are more interesting. So it was neat to see kind of that very person-focused urban planning debate taking place at a time that was very car-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were some debates too from disability advocates about how closing the intersection at the time was violating their right to cross the street and interact downtown.
Which is so interesting. And of course, I wanted to set up the first hour more historically with politics and history, because in the next hour we're going to hear some of those concerns and celebrations re-echoed today in 2025, right?
Yeah, it was a nice parallel, I think, to stuff I heard people talking about in 2018 and we're still talking about until this.
Alex, some of your favorites include some of the cars in the 1930s, right?
Yeah, so, if you look at really early images of Winnipeg, there's a ton of people on the streets. And by, the late 1920s, 1930s, a lot more people have cars. About 1 in 12 people have cars in Manitoba. And so we really start having to wrestle with that, where do the cars go and where do the people go? And suddenly the people can't just be on the street anymore. So we have to be doing things like setting jaywalking laws and putting up street lights for the first time in the 1930s, as opposed to just having, an officer there kind of directing people.
How much time did you two spend in the archives?
A lot.
Yeah, quite a bit.
I bet. Let's get to some of the celebrations and sorrows here at Portage and Maine. One of your faves that comes up is probably, I would say, for those who are sports-minded, at least the most iconic, which is the Bobby Hull signing, right?
Yeah. Bobby Hull is signed to the Winnipeg Jets here at Portage and Maine in a fairly massive event. There were, I believe, 3,000 people present, but it was a fairly big deal at the time. It was Winnipeg's first major hockey team. Hull, I can't remember the exact number. I think it was around $3 million to sign. It was not cheap to get him to come here. It was a fighting contract with the team in the States. So it was a really big moment of sort of excitement for what this could mean for the city. And then when we win the Avco Cup, which is sort of the earlier tournament
to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. People come back to Portage and Maine because that's that moment that Hull was signed. And I think those two things cemented as kind of a sports victory spot to come and celebrate.
Why do we come here, Alex?
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's one of the points we make in the book is that, whether we're sort of in grief or we're celebrating, there seems to be something about Portage and Maine that's just magnetic to Winnipeggers, that just pulls people here. And I think part of it, as we talk about in the book, is that we don't really have a public square. Like in London, they have Speaker's Corner, right? We don't have anything like that. And so there have been different places that have played that role, like Victoria Park during the strike, Market Square. But Portage and Maine just sort of being at the center, being somewhere that you can be seen, I think has just become that public square by default.
In the title of your book, you refer about how Portage and Maine, and I mentioned this, shaped, though, was the word I want to key on, how it shaped history, politics, and urban life. I wonder, today, another moment in our history, how might today's opening to pedestrian traffic reshape us, do you think, and reshape the city, Sabrina?
I think that it's not going to be like a panacea for all of downtown's ills, but I think it is a step forward in planning a downtown that's more for the people that live and work here. I think there's a perception that people aren't downtown, but Alex used to live downtown. There's lots of people here all the time. So I think planning for a space that people should exist in and be seen in is really important.
How about you, Alex? What do you think? How will we be reshaped by today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just in terms of practicalities, it'll be really nice to have these four corners, together, like on something like a First Friday or like a Nuit Blanche. You sort of set yourself up in one corner and that's where you're going to stick, right? And especially, once this MMF building that we're in front of opens up, it'll be really cool just to be able to hop over and see what's going on.
I have season tickets to MTC, and I know that whenever we're going to shows, we want to support local businesses and go for dinner.
Yep.
And often there's that choice of, it's in the winter shows. Am I running across Main Street up the way, and how far do I go? And sometimes if there were restaurants down here we wanted to go to, we would think about, the choice. Do we want to go all the way through the underground?
Totally.
And yeah, so people's very practical habits could be changed by this, whether or not you're in support of what might come next.
And for tourists as well. Trying to direct tourists underground is crazy.
Thank you both. Good luck with your book. Thank you so much for sharing all the photos that people were checking out this morning as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
That is Sabrina Janke and Alex Judge. They are the authors of Portage and Maine, how an iconic intersection where we're sitting right now shaped Winnipeg's history, politics, and urban life. So they also have a podcast called One Great History. Check them out. Their book is coming out in October. We are live at Portage and Maine outside the MMF building. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and I'm here with our show team. And thank you so much for joining us. If you want to come down and be part of our show, just come on down. If you want to weigh in on the line, 788-3205. Much more to come as we talk about this day in our history and the big change here. Let's go to headlines. Heather Wells is here with stories and details.
Good morning. And it's not just pedestrians, but in Winnipeg, people who bus to and from wherever they have to go are also facing a new reality. Winnipeg Transit about to go through the biggest change in its history. A new network goes into effect on Sunday, altering just about every bus route in this city. We'll tell you all about it coming up. Also, rural municipalities say emergency care is becoming a guessing game, and Doctors Manitoba warns it could get worse. That organization predicts only 20 of 95 rural ERs will be reliably open 24/7 in Manitoba this summer. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. In the weather forecaster for today, I can tell you current conditions, 14 degrees. It's partly cloudy in Winnipeg and winds are calm. And in our forecast for today, sunshine, a bit of a mix of sun and cloud a little later this morning, and it's going to be windy. And on the windiest corner, it's appropriate. Winds will be south, 30 to 50. Our high is 27 with humidex 32, so very sticky today. Get ready for that. Well, a lot of people are starting to come down now behind me. I think people just want to have a look at what this is going to be like here at Portage and Maine. As I've been mentioning, we are outside the MMF building. Behind us, the lines are already painted on the street. There's a gentleman on a bike. Good morning. And the barricades are still up. They're going to be taking those down around 10:30. I also see the mayor of the city of Winnipeg. We'll talk to Scott Gillingham right after 7 o'clock. Some, as I mentioned, will celebrate today. Others will say they were let down after they voted to keep Portage and Maine closed to foot traffic in 2018. Also today, we're going to hear more from you. We're going to hear also from an accessibility advocate coming up about how they feel about the circus, which will close in the future. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is getting married in Venice, and a lot of locals aren't happy about it.
He represents the future that we don't want to live in.
How protests have grown over the feeling that the ultra-rich are using the city as a playground. Coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Despite criticism from senators, Indigenous groups, and environmental advocates, Bill C-5 is now law. It is Prime Minister Mark Carney's major projects legislation, and it helps him uphold a promise he made to Canadians during the election. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, what happens now?
Well, passing this bill, Marcia, doesn't build projects. It doesn't even approve projects, notwithstanding the dire warnings about the potentially draconian effects of what's in this bill. We aren't waking up this morning to a rules-free zone, but we will see if a better balance has been struck. The Prime Minister heard loud and clear from Indigenous leaders that his process fell short. He's committed to key conversations this summer, trying to set that right. But anytime you work fast, you break things. Paula Simons was one of many senators uncomfortable with how the Senate got squeezed by the Prime Minister's July 1st deadline.
We did our job of laying out all our concerns very clearly. And that way, if something does go sideways, we will have the somewhat dubious pleasure of being able to say, we told you so.
On the CBC's Front Burner podcast, Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson said those who think the government could have taken things slower should talk to workers who are losing their jobs right now in this trade war. The business community wanted this. Now they've got it.
This is not the federal government building projects. This is us creating the environment through the Act to give them regulatory clarity and certainty so they'll put their money to work for Canadians.
We're going to see now whether it really was government rules standing in the way of a building spree or whether red tape was just the most convenient excuse. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith wouldn't name who, but she said earlier this week that there is a proponent for a new West Coast bitumen pipeline ready to step up. The Premier of neighbouring BC, David Eby, has been maintaining there isn't a proponent like that pending. We're about to see who's right.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says the government is pushing Washington for more details about a Canadian citizen who died in ICE custody. The U.S. Immigration Department says 49-year-old Johnny Noviello died in Florida at a detention facility. He had been in the States since 1988. And he had resident status. But Noviello also served time in prison for drug trafficking and racketeering. ICE says the cause of Noviello's death is under investigation. Doctors face specific challenges when it comes to the health of refugees and migrants. An annual conference in Halifax is focusing in on them. Physicians and nurses from all over North America will be there. But the Trump administration's approach to immigration is casting a shadow over the event. Shayna Luck has the story.
Adib Arianson will do his hair carefully and put on his good suit this weekend when he delivers a talk to healthcare workers from around the world.
I think it's very important. And
he will talk about fleeing his home country of Afghanistan as a refugee. It wasn't safe for a young queer man after the Taliban retook the country in 2021. He crossed the border to Tajikistan, where the stress put him in hospital for a few weeks.
It was constant panic attacks. It was fear. It was just shock.
Some doctors at this 500-person conference say that fear is still following their patients.
They come into the office, they have increased stress, increased anxiety.
Dr. Catherine McKenzie teaches at Yale and treats refugee families. She's worried and saddened after the U.S. suspended refugee admissions and slashed their health programs.
Obviously, I'm a doctor. I want people whom I see as patients to be healthy, mentally healthy and physically healthy.
Conference organizers say they're seeing half the usual attendees because some delegates are afraid they'll be hassled on re-entry to the States. And they plan to publish a statement out of this conference showing support for refugees and migrants everywhere. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Hungarian President Viktor Orban is warning there will be legal consequences for organizing or attending a pride march in Budapest. The city's annual event is planned for tomorrow. Thousands of people are expected, including several European lawmakers, even though Hungarian authorities have banned the pride march. Pablo Gutierrez has more.
Ursula Gunder is a dual Canadian-Hungarian national currently in Budapest. She'll be marching in the city's Pride event for the first time alongside her relatives.
Even my family members who have never been part of Pride, and I never thought they would, are going to take part because they want to show their support, and they also want to show themselves against the oppression of what's happening in this country.
Anyone who attends the march could be fined. The government passed a law earlier this year letting police block LGBTQ plus events. Ministers say it's part of a move to protect children, but Budapest city officials say the new law doesn't apply. Here is City Councillor Richard Barabas.
If the municipality is organizing the Budapest Pride March, then it is absolutely legal, and the police won't have any legal base to dissolve it or dismantle it.
Despite the uncertainty, tens of thousands of people are expected to march, and some 70 European lawmakers are expected to attend, defying the government's demand for the EU to stay out of Hungary's internal affairs. Tamás Dombos is with the Hatter Society, Hungary's oldest LGBTQ plus advocacy group.
We've never seen such a support coming from the Hungarian community.
Pride organizers expect this to be the largest march in its 30-year history, with a message they hope will be heard across Europe. Pablo Gutierrez for CBC News, Budapest.
Today marks 1 year since an Ontario woman was sentenced to prison for defrauding Inuit organizations, all to help pay for the education of her twin daughters. Now one of her daughters has gone public for the first time about the case. As Juanita Taylor reports, many Inuits say it's stirring up anger and frustration.
Disappointed, to say the least. To play the victim in all this, it just is, it's not right.
Noah, the son of Kitty Noah, the Inuk woman used to get Inuit status for non-Inuit twins from Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, or NTI, says Jordan Archer, who changed her name from Nadia Gill, didn't offer any accountability in a story published in the Toronto Star for her part in what may be the first Indigenous identity fraud case in Canada.
To pretend like the sisters were not aware of the scheme is ridiculous.
Archer claims in the Toronto Star article that she never claimed to be Inuk by blood. She said her mother, Karima Manji, presented her with a Nunavut Tungavik enrollment card at the age of 17, telling the sisters that they were eligible to receive the cards for Inuit beneficiaries because of a connection Manji had with an Inuit family from Iqaluit, and giving them access to receiving over $158,000 in scholarships and bursaries. Nunavut MP Lori Idlaut says it's difficult for her to believe Archer's story.
And if she genuinely cares about what impact she had on Inuit, I think she should do her research, learn more about Inuit, and give that genuine apology.
Noah agrees.
That's the one thing certainly lacking in that Toronto Star interview was any sort of apology.
In April, Archer refused to do an interview with CBC. In federal prison, Manji told the Toronto Star that she's appalled by the hurt she caused, not only to Inuit communities, but to her own children. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Jeff Bezos' 3 days of nuptials in Venice are turning the city of canals into an opulent wedding venue for billionaires, and outraged working-class demonstrators are protesting. Megan Williams reports.
With cameras clicking, Oprah, the Kardashians, Elton John, Bill Gates, and other celebrities and billionaires cruise the canals of Venice. As local protesters make noise, releasing effigies of Bezos sitting on a toilet made of Amazon boxes, or floating in a canal clutching cash, they unfurl banners that read, "The 1% ruins the world." Not all of Venice welcomes him, because there are citizens who have totally rejected the economic system he supports. Activists say Venice, a UNESCO heritage site, is being handed over to the ultra-rich, turned into a theme park for private parties, while real Venetians are priced out of the city. And it's not just about one billionaire bash or the 90 private jets dropping off the glitterati. It's about a pattern. A city selling out to mass tourism and luxury events, while neglecting housing, services, and the shrinking number of residents trying to stay. More protests are planned ahead of today's wedding, which will reportedly cost around $70 million. The party venues are now in full lockdown. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Hi, I'm Darren.
Amy.
And we're from Smokin' Bob's Hot Dogs.
And we're listening to Information Radio.
Yeah, Information Radio all the way.
And they're listening to a special edition of Information Radio, and they're usually set up where we are this morning, Smokin' Bob's. I'm Marcy Marcusa, live at Portage and Maine. And why are we here? Well, because today is the day. It's been 46 years, Winnipeg, since you've been able to walk across what is known as the most iconic intersection in our city. And later today, pedestrians will cross here. We are going to hear a lot this hour about that. So if you want to hear some archive news reports from 1979 when they decided to close this to pedestrians, that's coming up. Also, we're going to talk to the mayor. Some will celebrate today. Others will say they feel a little let down. They voted to keep it closed to foot traffic in 2018. So we'll address that, and we'll also answer some logistical questions. We've been watching new signs go up behind us here all morning long. Stay with us. Also, looks good at street level, but one business owner says he's excited at street level, but he's worried underground about what the closure of the circus that's going to be happening soon could mean to businesses, so we'll hear from him. And then finally, I just want to mention we also are going to ask whether or not this is going to be a good thing for people with mobility challenges or people who use wheelchairs. One of my next guests says, frankly, he thinks for everyone, disability or not, the underground concourse was a maze to navigate, so he's super excited about this today, so we'll talk to him as well. So lots of perspectives. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for more on this and more on other news stories with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, at Winnipeg City Hall, the hope is that reopening Portage and Maine to pedestrians will liven up all of downtown. Public Works Chair Janice Luke says it's going to make it easier for people to move around downtown. Winnipeg Transit is also about to introduce some changes. So it's not just pedestrians. People who take the bus are also going to see a big change as a new network goes into effect on Sunday. This new network alters pretty much every bus route in the city. There will be fewer stops, straighter routes, and the city says the new system will be more efficient and reliable and will offer more frequent service on major routes. So we'll hear about that as well in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby is back at 541 Portage Ave, and you're doing weather and traffic today. Abby, what you know?
It's humid and mild across the province. A mix of sun and clouds in the forecast. We're going to see showers and thunderstorms in some areas later, both north and south. Winnipeg right now, we are now at 15. The sky clearing. You're seeing the sun make its appearance. We will have a mix of sun and clouds this morning, turning more sunny as we get into the afternoon. The high will be near 27, but as you feel outside, the humidity is going to make it feel close to 32, 33. Similar conditions we're seeing in the southern regions. Temperatures close to 18 degrees right now. Up north, we're seeing temperatures close to 16. Winnipeg, we are at 15. And in traffic, nothing to report except looking behind you. I can just see the lights, the cars at the light. That's all I see. But if you see anything, 788-3093.
Abby's checking out that shot on YouTube in case you are too. We're sitting in front of the MMF building, which is under repair and renovation here. No barricades behind me. You can see straight through to Portage and Maine. Those have been long gone now. We're on the southeast corner, so across from us, the Bank of Montreal, 201 Portage, and then, of course, the Richardson building behind us as well. So those barricades are down. The lines are painted on the pavement. 10:30 this morning, this intersection will officially reopen to foot traffic for the first time since 1979. Even though in 2018, in a non-binding plebiscite, 65% of Winnipeggers did vote for this not to happen. Mayor Scott Gillingham, though, and the majority of the current council voted to reopen Portage and Maine to foot traffic. They say it came down to the bottom line. The mayor is here now live. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I've been watching the crews. They've been sort of starting with new signage behind us. There's still those hooded caps over the pedestrian crossings, so people know it's not quite ready. How are you feeling about today?
I'm feeling really good about today. This is actually a really big week for the city of Winnipeg, and especially for our downtown. Today, in a few hours, we'll open Portage and Maine to pedestrian traffic, as you said, for the first time in 46 years. Sunday, our transit system changes entirely to a new transit network system, and then Graham Avenue, the buses come off of Graham, and we're going to open that up to be a pedestrian corridor. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening in the downtown this week.
What do you say to the folks that aren't excited, those who feel disappointed? I alluded to this. Maybe they feel like they voted no in 2018. The majority of people did on that plebiscite, and they don't buy it. They think this is going to be a traffic nightmare. They have some worries. What do you say to those folks today?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we have pedestrians crossing at thousands of intersections in Winnipeg, so we can do this. But I think the other thing I would say is that we had a study of the underground concourse, which has to be repaired because there's water coming into it. When the early numbers came in, it's $73 million to repair the underground concourse and 5 years of construction at Portage and Maine at street level. So there'd be 5 years of traffic delays. When we looked at that, it really came down to a practical decision to say it's time to open Portage and Maine to pedestrian traffic at grade. Also, when we look at the future of our city, I think this is a very important decision to make this investment as one investment in the downtown, one of many key things that's happening in the center of our city.
Now, the $73 million would have been the underground. To do this was $17 million, right, to reopen?
Just over $17 million, yeah.
So let me ask you this. We had a business owner on earlier, kind of really worried, works in Winnipeg Square, worried about the circus underground and those business owners. The underground circus will close. Is that a definite thing?
The plan is still for it to close, but it's not going to be anytime soon. There's actually still analysis being done. We expect to report back at City Hall this fall sometime. Our staff is doing some further investigating as to what it would take to close it, and also if there's some other way that it could be repaired. But as it stands right now, the plan is still eventually to close it, but we're still waiting on more information.
Before we get into some logistics about crossing Portage and Maine here, people might be wondering about those. I want us to spend just literally exactly a minute and 44 seconds. So I'm going to give you, Mayor Gillingham, a little screen here so you can watch. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch as well, but the sound is awesome. So we pulled out of the archives 1979, a CBC News report about the decision to close Portage and Maine to foot traffic. This was a story shot in the dead of winter.
Corner of Portage and Main, coldest spot in Winnipeg.
More than that, just about everybody says the intersection of Portage Avenue and Main Street is the windiest and coldest in Canada. That may not be true. Surely there's a colder place in the Arctic somewhere, but it's close enough to the truth to make this one of the most famous crossroads in the country. The intersection was actually established in 1863. You will notice many people have learned the Portage and Main technique. The quicker you can get across, the less chance you will freeze to death before you reach the other side. Today, an historic event. The city opened a $7 million underground walkway, which includes some stores, and to the great relief of Winnipeg pedestrians, a heating system. Eventually, many downtown buildings will be connected by a series of underground concourses and above-ground skywalks. Shortly after the official opening, fighting the bitter wind above ground seemed to be a hard habit to break for many people.
How come you're going to walk across the street instead of using the underground walkway?
Because I don't know how to get to it just yet. Right. And this is faster. Well, I didn't know where the entrance was.
Oh, it's just over there.
Okay, I'll take a chance and go through it.
You think it's a good idea, is it?
Oh, yeah, so if I could find it, it's better than walking in the cold.
But it's got to work good, because it's just freezing out here. Got to run, got to get inside.
I didn't know it was open.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's right behind you there.
Oh, it's kind of far. I think I'll just run across.
Later, there will be no choice for Winnipeggers. The crosswalks will be abolished, and pedestrians who want to get to the other side will have to go underground. After 116 years, the city has finally decided that Portage and Main is fine for cars, but it's no fit place for human beings. Terry Maddie, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's kitschy to hear that.
It's pretty fun, and some of the clothes are just fantastic. That's great.
I have to ask, though. I mean, obviously that's the 1979 video and audio from our CBC report. But one of the things that's brought up in that video, actually, a lot of people write about now. They talk about winter. How much do you think folks might miss the opportunity to get warm once once the circus closes underground?
I think it's important to say again. There's the underground concourse is not closing anytime soon. right? There's still more work to do there. But I think, and I don't want to diminish the intersection and its the power and the lore of the intersection of Portage and Main in people's minds. But at the end of the day, I've said it this way, it's just an intersection. There are thousands of intersections in our city that get the same temperatures, summer and winter, that Portage and Main gets.
Yeah.
And people cross there. So, I think it's, I try to keep it in perspective.
So I'm going to ask you about some logistics, and then we're going to go down memory lane for some of the iconic moments that happened at Portage and Main, because it is one of those mornings where this is a historic morning. They'll be saying, remember this day, June 27th, 2025? So how long will the lights be? Some disability advocates are wondering, just because of maybe because of the length of the street, they're wondering if that's factored in. The lights maybe be a little longer, the crossing lights, that is, for pedestrians.
So I don't have the details on how long the lights will be, if they'll be longer or not. I do know that not that long ago in our downtown, we actually made changes to all of our pedestrian lights in the downtown that gives pedestrians a 5-second delay. So if you're at any intersection in Winnipeg's downtown, the pedestrians get a 5-second head start, and so that'll be the same here.
Are you considering a scramble crossing in the future?
No, not to my knowledge. That would be something for our engineers to look at. But when this was talked about, the concept of a scramble crossing, our traffic engineers said the intersection is too large to accommodate a scramble crossing.
It officially opens at 10:30. Have you crossed yet, or who's going to be the first?
I have not crossed. I have not crossed yet.
Okay.
You and I were talking, off air about the fact that we're kind of rule followers. So
I'm a rule follower. I don't like jaywalking.
I have not crossed yet.
Okay. Who will you be first to cross, Mayor Gillingham?
I don't know if I'll be first, but I'll be one of the first, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I'm excited about today, and there's a time just after 10:30 that the traffic light is going to change, the walk light's going to come on, and I'm going to walk across.
So that's when those hoods will come off behind us. They're hooded on the pedestrian crossings. There's already been some changes here. What about the transit stop here in front of the MMF building? Is that going to be all ready for Sunday's big changes for transit?
No, there's actually a new transit stop that will be built, in this proximity just around actually Portage Avenue East. But yes, Sunday's a big change, and there'll be buses coming off of Graham Avenue and more buses going through Portage and Main.
We have some photos and video of iconic moments here of Portage and Main, so I know that some of these are going to come up if you're watching on YouTube. I was going to get you to guess them, but we might be a little bit of a time delay, so that might not work, but you might recall some of these. Not the first one. This is the royal visit, I think, in 1939 by King George. They had banners all across Portage and Main. 2019, 2021 Grey Cup parades.
Yes.
So, yeah, always packed down here. And then the Bobby Hull signing with the Jets coming back to Winnipeg, Jets leaving Winnipeg. Why do you think so many people, I asked this in the first hour, but in your point of view, why do you think so many people choose here to gather?
It is Winnipeg's iconic intersection. It is historic in its importance, and it's it's exciting because the intersection will play a key to our identity as a city in the future as well. So it's an intersection, it's a space that we hold dear as Winnipeggers in our history, and it matters in our future as well.
As I said, it's not all celebration here. We also gather in moments of sorrow. So the Idle No More protest here, Portage and Main, and then of course moments on Canada Day. There was recently that giant Canadian flag that was created. Everybody was in red. I think CBC got drone shots from above. Do you think that now that it's going to open to foot traffic, will you do more at this intersection formally? I'm not expecting you're going to say you're going to bring back the $300,000 street parties that we had before, but I'm wondering whether or not you might think about that more formally, gatherings here and such.
There's no immediate plans for that. I mean, I guess anything is possible, but I have in my office, on my wall, I have several photos. One of the photos I have is from Victory in Europe Day of 1945, where people gathered to celebrate, the end of the war in Europe, and they gathered at Portage and Main. And that photo is now, taken just over 80 years ago. And you're right, Portage and Main has always been a gathering place for key moments in our city and our community's history.
Let's just spend our last moments here talking about how you see this revitalizing downtown, because you alluded to this. Why is it important? As you said, it's just an intersection, and yet.
So opening Portage and Main to pedestrian traffic is not going to save downtown, but it's an important piece of many other pieces. and many investments that are going on right now. We are sitting right, as you mentioned at the outset, we're sitting right in front of the Manitoba Métis Federation building, the old Bank of Montreal building they've invested in, and it's going to be the new Métis Heritage Centre. It's going to be spectacular when it's finished. But we also have railside development. We have the Waiwane building, the old Bay building being transformed. We also have, Portage Place. There's transformation of the market lands property as well. So there's a lot of investment happening in the downtown right now that's really exciting. Opening Portage and Maine to pedestrian traffic is one piece of many pieces.
Thank you very much for making time for us today on what's going to be a busy day for you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
We should have got you shades. The sun came up right through the buildings right as we're talking here, but it sure feels nice and warm, Winnipeg. That's Scott Gillingham, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg.
What's your Canada thing? What makes you proud? What makes your patriotic soul sing? Join us at the Forks on Canada Day and tell us. CBC is bringing a digital display where you can get a picture, play our Canada Day quiz, and shout your Canada thing loud and proud. Look for CBC, proud sponsor of Canada Day at the Forks. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
If you have an issue in traffic, please call us just like Julie did. Tecumseh between the HSC is closed now between McDermott and Williams. So that is causing some issues in that area around the hospital. So if you are around HSC this morning, you're going to want to note that. Thanks for calling, Julie. Any other problems in traffic, please give us a call. It's 788-3093, and Abby will pass it along and we'll get it on the air here for you. The sun has just come up in downtown Winnipeg. It's really beautiful down here at Portage and Maine. And our current temperature right now in the city of Winnipeg is 14 degrees. Up in Thompson, mostly cloudy and 16. Up in Brandon, mostly cloudy and 11 degrees. And in Flin Flon, I bet you're enjoying being home, folks. It is a little foggy and it's 14 degrees right now there. I'm Marcy Marcusa, special edition of Information Radio, live from Portage and Maine. And I mentioned earlier in the show that this is a place where a lot of people come down to celebrate our sports teams, including the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who are still undefeated. Paul McGowan's here with Morning Sports on CBC. Hi there.
Hi, Marcy.
So a couple of veterans last night in the Blue Bombers, right? Off to this perfect start, helping us.
Yeah, well, a big part of that win was Winnipeg native Nick Dembski, the receiver, listed as a game-time decision, but he hauls in 2 touchdown passes in a 36-23 final. Those touchdown passes also mean that Dembski's personal streak of 74 straight games with at least 1 reception, that streak remains intact. The other veteran, of course, who played a big part last night, quarterback Zach Collaros, threw for over 300 yards last night, but his biggest play might have come in the fourth quarter when he took matters into his own hands. TSN's call of Collaros' rushing touchdown. Now, after that, he did fumble his toss of the ball into the stands. He did get it over on his second attempt. Stark difference, though, for the Bombers from where this team was at this point last season, still searching for their first win. Collaros says that while the opening win streak is nice, just getting a victory is the most important thing.
I think it's important just to win a game. Anytime you can. It's not easy in this league. The season is so long. It's just important for us to be critical tomorrow of this tape. Make sure we're hitting the weights, running, getting our bodies right for the upcoming week, and move on to Calgary. It's just such a long season. You got to keep building and building and building.
Yeah, that game against Calgary goes next Thursday.
All right, let's go to hockey in the NHL. The entry draft's actually tonight in LA, right?
And it is, and it's a new draft format for the league. We're used to that packed arena floor, the long tables of NHL executives for each franchise. Now, this year, the league is decentralizing the draft, in their words. So the management teams will largely stay at home with cameras on them, of course. Here's Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff on the change.
Like anything, when you try something new, there's going to be pros and cons. Kudos to try something, and we'll evaluate it from there. We had 2 rehearsals for this in the COVID drafts. Hopefully, we've learned a little bit there. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure, given the history of the league with the events that they try to, that they have been very successful at pulling off. Steve Merrill will have some good ideas that will go into implementation and see how they look on TV.
Now, there is still a live venue, and draft picks will be announced live at that venue. But with the management team at home, it will no longer be the general manager, say, announcing the pick. Teams are going to announce the picks via alumni, via celebrity fans. And, Marcy, when I think about famous fans, I think about, Snoop Dogg being a fan of the LA Kings. If you look up celebrity fans of the New York Islanders, who have the first pick in tonight's draft, it is basically Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, and it is Kevin Connolly of Entourage fame. So we'll see who the Islanders pull from as they, celebrate that first overall pick tonight.
Okay, I'm in. A little bit of local host history. Full on had a Ralph Macchio poster in my room growing up.
So you would be thrilled if Ralph Macchio comes out for the Islanders tonight. That's entirely fair.
All right, let's finish on tennis real quick here. Canadian qualifier will play in her first ever Grand Slam.
That's Carson Branstein, who at 24 earns her way into the Wimbledon draw. Interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, she's the cousin of LA Dodgers star Freddie Freeman. And like Freeman, she was born in California, chooses to compete, though, for Canada. She's also kind of a character. She is known for screaming at herself on the court, and she might be doing a lot of that next week. Her reward for earning her way into Wimbledon, Marcy, is a first-round matchup with world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka.
All right. Thanks a lot for being with us this morning, Paul. Take care.
Thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's Paul McGowan with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, 16 degrees. It's going to be very warm, windy, and humid again today. A high of 27. The humidex 32. Well, pedestrians at Winnipeg's most famous intersection finally get to see the light of day. After 46 years, Portage and Maine officially reopens to pedestrians above ground. People have had to go underground to get to the other side since 1979. Gino DeStasio is a professor of urban geography at the University of Winnipeg. He says the barriers keeping pedestrians from crossing the street are a remnant of a bygone era.
I really think the barriers and the bunkers are just a leftover of a machine car-driven era that wanted to see us be able to speed through downtown en route to burgeoning suburbs.
The shrouds are expected to be removed from the new crosswalk lights after rush hour this morning, and the first legal crossings are scheduled to happen at 10:30 this morning. Now, over at Winnipeg City Hall, the hope is reopening Portage and Maine
and more support for northern communities. Of the 85 cabins at Namibin Lake, 39 were destroyed this time.
Around downtown.
Some people are waking up to some dings or damage to their homes or vehicles north of Regina.
We'll just see more people on the streets. We'll see more people walking around in that area. People will be able to access the forks
There was
better.
ping pong and even golf ball-sized hail falling in the Lumsden area last night. And according to the videos we've seen, it lasted about 6 minutes or so.
After a report found it would cost $73
The time now is
million
6:32, and right now in Regina it is partly cloudy. It is 14 degrees. In Saskatoon it's partly cloudy as well,
on our
and
website this morning,
13 degrees. And then one other condition
well, pedestrians
of note, Prince
aren't alone
Albert, you're
in
seeing
walking
some
into a new
fog this
system.
hour. It's 13
Winnipeg
degrees in
Transit is
Prince
about to
Albert.
go
But
through
the
its biggest change in its history.
Due to that fog,
A
that
new
visibility
network
is
goes
reduced
into
down to
effect
about
Sunday,
400 meters
altering
in the Prince
just
Albert
about
area.
every
This
bus
is
route in
CBC
this
News.
city. With fewer
The
stops and
Saskatchewan
straighter
Wildlife
routes,
Federation
the city
is
says the new
joining
system
hunters
will be
and
more
landowners
efficient
to-
and reliable.
Hey, Anka, I
It will
missed what you
also
said.
offer more
Its
frequent
executive
service
director,
on major
Daryl Crabb,
routes.
says they
Bjorn
are
Okay,
Radstrom,
roger
Transit's
that.
manager of
Saskatchewan
service
residents,
delivery,
and
says
it's
the
just
city
not
thought
going
about
away.
making the changes
Hunting
in
gophers has
stages,
been a,
but
for
decided it
generations
wasn't
has been
possible.
something
It was
that's been,
really, in the
an
end, all or
activity that's
nothing,
been,
and I'm kind of glad we're doing it this way
utilized
because
by-
now
by many,
this
many
gets a lot of
thousands
attention, and we
Saskatchewan
just do all of the work
residents.
at once,
This is
and then
really
we
just a
can
way of
worry
us trying
about
to connect,
making it better as
the
opposed to
hunting
worried
community
about
with the
the
landowner
next
community
change
and try to
while
help out
making
with
the
that
recent one that we did better.
Based on the phone calls
Radstrom
the
said
Wildlife
people can try
Federation
planning their
receives,
routes
Crabb
with the
says
new
there is a
network by
significant
using the
increase
Winnipeg
in
Transit
the
app,
gopher population
Navigo,
this year.
and Google
It's
Maps.
working on making a plan to get rid
Rural
of them that will work with
municipalities say
insurance,
emergency care is
trespass
becoming
legislation,
a
and
guessing
privacy
game.
concerns.
And Doctors
After
Manitoba
that's all
warns
sorted, it
could
says
get
its
worse.
program will
They
go
predict
ahead.
only 20 of 95
Yesterday
rural
was
ERs
graduation
will be
day for
reliably
students
open
of Scott
24/7
Collegiate
this
in
summer.
Regina.
Rob
And for the
Lins,
school's
head of
basketball
council
coach,
Robert
Daniel
Misko,
Stonechild,
says
it is
sometimes
a
people
full
show
circle
up to
moment.
that
He
town's
used to play on the
ER
basketball
only
team
to
at
find the
Briarcrest
doors
College,
closed.
and
He
that's where
says
one of his
they're
players,
trying to get
David
more
Crow, will
healthcare
start this
workers,
fall.
but
Stonechild
bureaucratic
says he's proud
roadblocks
of
are
how
keeping
far Crow
staffing
has
levels
come.
to play
low.
basketball. Very frustrating for the local. That's huge, especially coming from where he's come from. The emergency is open and it's not open.
Crow moved to Regina when he was 9 years old from a foster home in BC. He joined basketball as an outlet for PTSD
Doctors
and anger.
Manitoba says staffing shortages and growing burnout are pushing more emergency rooms towards reduced hours.
And the Saskatchewan
periodic
Roughriders'
shutdowns,
final
or
practice
full
of the week
closures.
is done and dusted.
Advocates for victims of human
BC
trafficking
Lions,
say crime
the big
is
question
surging.
remains,
This month,
will quarterback
RCMP
Trevor
charged a
Harris
Portage
start?
Prairie couple who
After
are
some light
hotel
throwing
owners
Tuesday at
with human
practice, he was
trafficking.
absent
It relates
Wednesday
to
and listed
labor
with a head
trafficking
injury and
involving
illness.
4
But
employees
yesterday, Riders head
of
coach
the
Corey
Howard
Mace says
Johnson
Harris was
in
almost a
Portage.
full participant.
3 women
Mace
and
says
1 man
whether
from
to
India
start
started
him will
working
likely be
there
a
over the
game-time
past year.
decision.
Police say the victims worked 15-hour days and were paid well under minimum wage. They are also threatened with deportation. Diana Bussey works with victims of labor trafficking. She is with the Salvation Army.
We continue to see an increase of human trafficking, and this past year a significant increase, particularly for the purposes of labor trafficking.
Would start for the
Bussey
Riders.
says the best way to prevent labor trafficking is to make Manitobans more aware of the problem.
Our deck.
Still unbeaten after 3 games.
She says, what are we going to do? And I said,
with a bit of a cushion, courtesy their quarterback.
Zach Calera's on the 4th quarter on TSN, running the ball in instead of throwing it and earning a touchdown for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Blue and Gold beating the Edmonton Elks 36-23 last night. The Bombers with their 3rd straight win in front of their 7th straight sellout crowd at Princess Auto Stadium. Winnipeg now hits the road, heading to Calgary to kick off against the Stampeders on July 3rd. You can find more news updated throughout the day. CBC.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells live in our news center this morning. Well, if you've been watching the show on YouTube, then you will see that the sun came out right during Mayor Gillingham's interview about 7:15, right through the high rises here at Portage and Maine. We're outside on the sidewalk in front of the MMF building, and it just feels lovely and warm this morning, Abby, but not too sticky yet. What do you know about our regional forecast?
Yeah, not too sticky yet, but we're expecting a warm and a humid day across most of the regions today. We have a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms expected in a lot of areas up both north and the south side of the province today. Winnipeg 15, we're seeing that clear conditions. The sun already made its appearance. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds through the morning, and then more sunny conditions will kick in at that afternoon period. That's when we get a climb to about 27 degrees, and it's going to start feeling hotter. We're going to see the humidity get close to 32. The winds will be light from the south, making it, more like a pleasant one as we warm up, and then more clouds roll in the evening. A good chance of showers for Winnipeg. In the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing 14 degrees, similar to Winnipeg, warming close to 27. Brandon is at 12 degrees, seeing a mix of sun and clouds. We have a chance of showers there, warming to 27 also. The Parkland region, Dauphin sitting at 18 right now, mix of sun and clouds also. A good chance of showers likely later in the day, 28 you're warming up to. You're going to see windy conditions from the south. Gimli is at 14, warming to 27. The Power Flim Flom foggy at some points. We're going to see showers later and thunderstorm. 15 degrees at this time, high 25. Thompson and Churchill both at 16. We'll see highs around 19 in Churchill and 25 for Thompson later today. So it's going to be more like a mild, warm, humid conditions across most of the regions. Winnipeg at 15 at this point. For traffic, nothing yet except for that issues around Tecumseh, around the HSC between McDermott and Williams. It's just causing issues for people walking in that area, so you might want to find an alternative route to get to work. But if you see anything, you may call 788-3093.
All right, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, traffic is starting to pick up at Portage and Maine. Nothing crazy, no gridlock. Everything's moving fine. We are live, as we've been mentioning, here at this iconic intersection. We wanted to really be here when history is going to be made. It's hard to believe that this has been closed to pedestrians since 1979. Earlier this week, the CBC's Chloe Friesen was here talking to some Winnipeggers. She caught up with Mohammed outside 201 Portage, where he works.
It looks fantastic. It's been 11 years I'm in Winnipeg. I didn't like that very much because the downtown vibes were not there. But now I see that, I feel good. It looks pretty good. Little vibe of New York as well, I can say that.
And you work in one of these high rises that looks over Portage and Maine. Have you been able to watch the construction?
All the time, yeah. So even though when I was working upstairs, it's pretty quiet, but I used to hear quite a lot of noises, big machinery noises and stuff, which was a little disturbing. But after looking at the results, I'm happy.
What do you think the first day is going to be like watching people walk across Portage and Maine for the first time?
I'm waiting for that. I'm quite excited to see that, how it's going to look out.
My name is Emily.
Emily, where are you from?
I'm from Toronto.
And Emily, when you look at this intersection in front of you, what does it look like? How does it make you feel?
I don't really love it. It reminds me of a dumpster fire. Well, it'd be nice to actually cross a big street and get to where you need to go.
So it's opening on Friday, but it's taken decades. Would that ever fly in Toronto, you think?
No, there'd be uproar. Don't think the Torontonians would be very happy about it, if I'm honest.
My name's Sean. I think it's going to be useful for the city. Every time I see people come to the city, they complain that they can't get across. So I think it's a good thing, yeah.
And you were talking earlier about voting for Portage and Maine. What was that process like, or voting for it to open?
So I voted for it to open just because it seems to be more practical. Every major city has a major intersection you can cross, so it seems we should join the crowd, I guess. Yeah.
Do you work in this area?
Yeah, I work right here in 201.
Okay. Will opening it, maybe open up more opportunities for places to go on your break or your commute?
I haven't really thought about it yet. It hasn't opened yet, so we'll see, I guess. But I can't see it being a bad thing anyway. So.
How has it been watching the construction as you work in this area?
Yeah, actually, you know what? They did it pretty quick. I was pretty impressed with it, actually. So.
My name's Gabriel. I'm pretty excited for it. I feel like it's been a long time coming. Now that it's open, I feel like it wasn't really that big of a deal when they were making it out with the plebiscite. It seems like it's going to open on time, and I think it'll shorten the commute for a lot of people. It'll connect the East and West Exchange a lot better and just be a good thing, I think, for the city as a whole.
Yeah. And you talked about your own commute. How is it going to affect that?
It means I don't have to walk back to Fort to get back to Main Street, so it'll make it a straight line. So I think it'll shave a few minutes off my morning coffee walk.
CBC's Chloe Friesen earlier this week out here at Portage and Maine, speaking to some people downtown ahead of the reopening at 10:30 today to pedestrians.
Here I walk in the Winnipeg rain, trying to get a bus, trying to get a train, trying to get back to my field of grain, away from Portage Street and Main, where I blew my mind and my money in vain, and I blew my past on a fast Red River Jane.
So we just want to tell you a little bit about that tune. We're just going to give you a taste of it. Stompin' Tom, Red River Jane, of course, just one of the many songs that have Portage and Maine mentioned in it. It does tell the story of a man who partied a little too hard and then tried to get out of the city via Portage and Maine. Today, he could walk across. When he recorded that song back in the day, it was a time when, of course, you couldn't and had to go on the underground. Interestingly, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg on earlier this morning talking about the fact that while the circus is still planned to be closed under Portage and Maine, right now it is still open and they are still doing some assessments to see what they can do, and that might be really good news for some businesses down there. Some business owners underground have some concerns about what is happening here today. Earlier this morning, I spoke to one of them who was on his way to work underground. Mike Publicover has owned Stoneworks Bistro in Winnipeg Square for the past 3 years. He was pretty excited, actually, he said, to sit with us at street level on this day that Portage and Maine's reopening to pedestrians, but he is worried about that impending closure of the underground mall and how it could negatively affect his business and others. Here's more of what he shared with us at 6 o'clock this morning. Mike, thank you so much for taking time on this busy day to be with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the good stuff.
Sure.
Is that accurate? You're pretty excited about this behind us, the intersection opening?
It looks so much better than it did.
Yep.
We'll start there, right? I mean, I don't know how impactful that'll be on my business and what that's going to mean. I think the bus rerouting is going to have more of an impact, okay, but I'm not sure how that all lays out yet.
So the bus rerouting, just to stay there for a moment, is the other big transportation news. That's Sunday in the bus schedule. There's a bus right now. Why do you think that could have more of an impact?
Well, right now we have a lot of people that come off Graham and head towards the circus, and they walk right past me.
Got it.
So if they're not coming off Graham, how they're going to enter into the environment and whether that brings them past me or not, I don't know.
So you're going to have to see how that works.
Right.
What worries you about Portage and Maine reopening to pedestrians? And I guess obviously the underground circus, the impending closure there. What worries you about that from a business perspective?
I'm not sure how the opening upstairs or on street level is really going to change anything for me. We draw in from all over the place downtown. We have people walking in all the time, and we've created, I think, a destination for many. So whether they cross, at street level or go through the circus, how they get there, I don't know. Yep. So I don't know that that's going to have that much of an impact at this point. The circus is the bigger concern for me.
When the circus closes, why is that a concern for you? Where do most of your customers come from? Help us understand your business a bit.
Well, we draw from all the towers. And in the wintertime, whether you're going to stay inside the tower or you're going to put on a parka and boots and cross the street. So that's, you're likely not going to do that when the circus is there. I mean, get up off your workstation and you walk to wherever. Putting on parka and boots and all that would change things. I would think that more people would use the meal delivery app, things and so on, and I don't use those, so
got it.
That could be that could impact my business that way, and the catering aspect for me getting the food over to the different towers.
You chose your location in Winnipeg Square because of the towers. Is that right? Like you actually?
Well, correct. Yeah, it was. For me, it was, I thought, a fantastic location. In 2021, when I was planning it, all the talk was heading back to the office. And so I thought that the opportunity to have that particular space was a good one. It was very well equipped. It met all my needs. And then, of course, the residential tower at 300, is another potential source for me.
When the circus closes, and it will, because the city's not spending money, as we know, to fix it, where do you think that's going to leave the businesses, not just underground, but in Winnipeg Square? Like, is there a worry? How good is business now?
There's traffic in the mall, but the mall's still sitting largely empty. I mean, most of the places are. Now, as far as closing down, I don't know. I don't think they voted on that yet. I think there's still a lot of voices to be heard as far as, closing that one down. The city says it doesn't want to spend the money. I get it. But, every administration in the 35 years I've been in Winnipeg has said they want to improve downtown. So can they somehow show me how closing the circus does that?
Well, what can the city do in the meantime to support you? Or how do you reimagine the underground business scene in the future if it does close?
Well, I mean, there's two aspects to it too. I mean, closing it down means the Royal Bank, 220 Portage, and 360 don't have access to the other spots too. So that's one thing. I don't ask. I'm not looking for support. I just want traffic.
Yeah.
Right. The other big concern I have is we do a lot of people from the Fairmont. They just wander in. You close that circus, and everybody from the Fairmont now is coming out into the street to get anywhere, and is that going to portray the best image of Winnipeg in the wintertime?
Yeah. Anything to add I haven't asked you about that you think is important on this day of, history, really, a big change?
I don't know. It's we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
I have no idea how. I wasn't here when it closed. I wasn't in Winnipeg at the time.
Portage and Maine, yeah.
Yeah, so I've not seen it, what it's like when it's open.
Neither have I. I was 5 and I don't remember 1979. Mike, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Good luck with your business the rest of the day.
All right. You have a great day. Thank you.
That's my conversation with Mike Publicover. He had to go to work, and so he joined us early. He was here at 6 o'clock at Portage and Maine Live. He owns Stoneworks Bistro in Winnipeg Square, and as you heard, he has some concerns about the circus, still holding out hope that they're going to find a way to keep it open for him, but also for other businesses that are down there, and for some of the traffic. But part of the decision, the decision to reopen Portage and Maine to foot traffic was based on the cost of fixing the underground, which came in at a total of $73 million. where fixing the intersection to people to cross by foot was $17 million. So big difference. That's why the city said we're going to go this way. The intersection will officially reopen this morning at 10:30. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC Live at Portage and Maine.
This Canada Day, join CBC for an all-day party. From sun up to sundown. From coast to coast to coast. We'll be across the country celebrating all things Canada.
That's what it's all about, freedom to be Canadians.
Wrapping up with a giant live concert from the nation's capital. Canada Day 2025 on CBC. It's a Canada thing.
It is 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock. And it's interesting. Earlier this morning here at Portage and Maine, we had some people that were out for their morning walks or walking the dogs, and they were coming to have a peek at the intersection behind me here. And then there was sort of a quiet period, and now we've got some people that are coming and checking it all out with phones in hand, taking photos. And we don't yet have the intersection fully open, but lots of interest in this. Now, as we just heard, some business owners underground, where we're sitting right now in Winnipeg Square, do have concerns about what lies ahead, but others won't miss going down in the circus when it comes to the ease of getting across this intersection. David Crone is with us live. He's the executive director of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba. He says a lot of people living with mobility issues are going to wake up pretty happy today. Good morning.
Good morning, Mercy.
So how are you feeling about this?
You know, it's a historical day, and I'm really looking forward. We've done a lot of interviews and a lot of stories about why we need to open it. And I'm really happy it's here today.
From a mobility point of view, what was the reality and challenge when this wasn't open to foot traffic?
Well, it was, the circus is a great name for it. The underground, just where we're at today, there's a set of stairs to come up to this little plaza. So if I was using my wheelchair today, I couldn't get here. So yeah, with lifts not working or just confusion and just being amazed, now I can just cross the street. It's a nice direct path.
I know that you were talking about things not working. The elevators were quite a challenge for some time here in Winnipeg, that you would give you access if you had mobility to the underground, right?
Yeah, there was a real problem there for a while. Nobody knew who owned the different lifts and who had to maintain them. And you would get 2/3 of the way to your destination and find out one lift doesn't work and have to go back the whole way. So, you know, it's like I said, this is a lot cleaner and easier and more direct.
Some people weighed in on my Facebook page, and they actually are questioning how this might be in the winter. For example, if you are a person that uses a wheelchair and you're going to be going through the intersection, slush under the wheels, for example, if it proves challenging. Would you say still, though, that is going to be an upgrade from crossing underground, as you said?
Well, this is an intersection like any other intersection in Winnipeg. And so then it comes down to snow clearing and the job of the city to maintain the roads that we have. So whether we had crossing at street level or not, that's just a snow clearing issue. That's not really an infrastructure issue.
I understand that you have been talking to some folks that are going to make a point of being here to get across.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be here at 10:30, and I invite all my members and all the folks to come on down. It's, like I said, a historical day. You know, you can tell your grandkids and everybody that you were here when it officially opens.
One of the lovely things you shared is that someone who does use a wheelchair said that they will be here crossing in their wheelchair just because they can.
Well, that's so true, right? Like, we've all been arguing and with the plebiscite in 2018 and trying to get the vote out, and you know, it really is a good spot for Winnipeggers to be at such an iconic corner, and it's now for all Winnipeggers.
You have also said that it's important, though, to make sure Portage and Maine is, quote, fully accessible, which is a phrase you use.
Yeah.
What does that mean for what you need here for, I guess, length of crossing, and what does fully accessible mean?
I mean, just the timing of the lights. I'm interested to see what that looks like. Again, it comes down to snow clearing and how they take care of that in the winter. But I mean, it's nice and pristine now. We'll see how it is in 10 years, and you know what the infrastructure and the concrete and all that looks like.
Do you often come down here, David, for yourself? I'm just curious whether or not this is going to improve any part of your commute.
My office is at 213 Notre Dame. I can literally see it just over here, and so now I'll be able to work and live in this area a lot better.
Was the concourse something that was so bad that you would avoid?
I haven't been down there since the pandemic.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's because if it were easier to use, you would have.
Yeah. I had other options.
What else are members in your circle of the disability community talking about? I can't let you go before we talk about Sunday because there's huge transit changes coming. How's that factoring into the conversations?
Well, I'm concerned that my all members are just the confusion and. You've been taking the same bus. My biggest issue, and that I didn't realize they were going to do, is take away so many bus stops or change the bus stops. So I think a lot of it is trial and error. I think a lot of it is I really hope to hold Janice Lukes at her word that in a year they're going to review and make changes as needed. We'll have to see and document the problems and the issues, and then hopefully the city and transit has a mind to make changes as needed.
Has the clarity been there for you from the city in terms of what the alternatives might be? Because I know we've been doing quite a few interviews about the changes to the stops, which might mean, more frequent buses once you get to the area where you want to go or on main routes, but you still have maybe a bit of a farther way to get there. But then they also have part of their service, which is going to be an on-demand service where you can call and get a bus they're talking about, which they've piloted and had in the past. Is that something that's understood to be helpful, or is it?
I don't think that's understood, and not all of my members have a cell phone. Just a straight cost thing. They don't have that extra $80 a month to have a phone. Again, they're changing it. They're not going back. I just hope that they have an open mind to make changes when needed, and they'll listen to folks when we express concerns going forward.
Well, we'll let you get your Portage and Maine selfie. A whole bunch of people are behind you doing exactly that.
Right.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
That is David Crone, Executive Director of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba, expressing excitement for today and the reopening of Portage and Maine to pedestrians. It's 4 minutes to 8 o'clock. I just want to go through a couple of Facebook comments. On my page, there's been like 150 comments that have been coming in. So Jim Vickers saying, I hope it's a scramble pedestrian light. That is not something right now that is planned for this area, by the way, but some people weighing in on wanting that. Judy Hrskovich says Confusion Corner moves downtown. So some skepticism there. Mike Winnipeg writing in, long overdue despite the high price tag, he says. He says if you tried to go through the concourse from one corner to another as a pedestrian, and it's impossible to find entrances. And so he's looking at today as a good thing. He says it was expensive, but we pay taxes to do these types of important projects. Marianne Cirilli weighing in my opinion, wait and see. It's nice, but mostly symbolic in terms of pedestrian mode shift. Much bigger issues in our sprawling prairie city of low density, low tax return and crumbling infrastructure. And then finally, Vic Pereira writing in about Portage and Maine reopening to foot traffic. I think they could have come up with a hybrid solution, Vic says. What about going north-south along the east side? Maybe that would have worked to open to pedestrians, but on the west side, an underground option could have been beneficial. Portage and Maine is too wide for it to be safe as it needs to be for pedestrians. That is something that I plan to do. In full disclosure, listeners, I didn't. I was going to pace myself across here and compare it to other intersections in Winnipeg. Is it, in fact, by distance, our largest intersection? It certainly is one of our busiest, as you can hear behind me today. We're broadcasting right in front of the Manitoba Métis Federation building, and we still have much more to come on our live special show. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells, who's at 541 Portage Ave, just up the way from here, and she has your day's news headlines.
Good morning. Well, we're talking a lot about pedestrians. Also, we're going to talk about people who take transit and people who ride their bikes. Winnipeg Transit about to change its entire route network overnight, Saturday into Sunday. On Sunday, buses will switch to a new system which the city says will offer more frequent service along major routes. With the new system, buses will come at least every 10 to 15 minutes on major routes. A Winnipeg cycling activist is disappointed by a proposal to put bike lanes on Wellington Crescent. A city report recommends the lanes be tested from Academy Road to Stradbrook starting this next spring, and that's after the city gathers some feedback from area residents, but Ian McCausland at Bike Winnipeg says it makes more sense to get that feedback after the residents have seen how the pilot project works. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much. Let's get into a couple problems in traffic here. Stephen called very heavy traffic, McPhillips and Inkster right now, super backed up. I know that's been a problem, lots of construction there. Also, Chris calling emergency vehicles blocking 2 lanes, southbound Pembina after Confusion Corner, that's by a senior's home there. And the traveling Transconian said construction on Marion and Gully is slowing traffic, backed up down Marion towards Archibald. In addition, around HSC, things are plugged up as well. So lots of trouble out there. Take it easy, 788-3093. Continue to update if things clear up. Still ahead, Chloe Friesen is live with a group of cyclists that are getting ready for the reopening of Portage and Maine.
Power. Jerry Bruckheimer has produced pretty much every action-packed film you can name. Top Gun, Armageddon. Now he's diving into the world of F1. He'll tell you about sticking Brad Pitt behind the wheel of a real race car.
I'm not here to hold anyone's hand. I'm here to race.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is getting married today in Venice, and a lot of locals aren't happy about it. How protests have grown over the feeling that the ultra-rich are using the city as a playground. Coming up on The Current.
The Canadian economy. Statistics Canada has just released its report for gross domestic product for April. It shows the economy shrank by 0.1%. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has looked over the report. And Peter, what are you seeing?
You have to put this in the context, Marcia, of when this happened. We're looking at April, which was the absolute peak of all of the uncertainty, of the highest tariff rates that Canadian businesses were facing. So much uncertainty that it weighed down on economic activity because nobody really knew how all of this was going to continue to unfold. And you look at who got hit the hardest. Goods-producing industries down 0.6%. Services-producing industries did mostly just fine, but it was mostly manufacturing, of course, that was so clobbered, down 1.9%. And that's driven by the obvious contenders: transportation equipment, motor vehicle manufacturing. We saw non-durable goods like food and oil caught up in the uncertainty. Those were down as well, but not by nearly as much as the other things, the big ones, cars, car parts, and everything goes along with it.
This is a real steep drop-off from March. What does the number tell us?
Yeah, look, and it's important to remember what happened in March, right? We saw that huge surge in exports in March as businesses on both sides of the border tried to get ahead of these tariffs. They tried to get as much stuff out the door over the course of March before the tariffs really kicked in earnest. And of course, that's going to lead to a corresponding drop-off in exports in the following month. I think what's going to be interesting going forward is how do things look for May? The advance estimates is also down, so we'll have 2 back-to-back months of negative GDP growth in Canada. It's a tough time for the economy. These numbers are starting to bear that out.
Thank you, Peter.
You bet.
CBC's senior business correspondent, Peter Armstrong. Despite criticism from senators, Indigenous groups, and environmental advocates, Bill C-5 is now law. It is Prime Minister Mark Carney's major projects legislation, and it helps him uphold a promise he made to Canadians during the election. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, what happens now?
Well, passing this bill, Marcia, doesn't build projects. It doesn't even approve projects, notwithstanding the dire warnings about the potentially draconian effects of what's in this bill. We aren't waking up this morning to a rules-free zone, but we will see if a better balance has been struck. The Prime Minister heard loud and clear from Indigenous leaders that his process fell short. He's committed to key conversations this summer, trying to set that right. But anytime you work fast, you break things. Paula Simons was one of many senators uncomfortable with how the Senate got squeezed by the Prime Minister's July 1st deadline.
We did our job of laying out all our concerns very clearly
And that way, if something does go sideways, we will have the somewhat dubious pleasure of being able to say, we told you so.
On the CBC's Front Burner podcast, Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson said those who think the government could have taken things slower should talk to workers who are losing their jobs right now in this trade war. The business community wanted this. Now they've got it.
This is not the federal government building projects. This is us creating the environment through the Act to give them regulatory clarity and certainty so they'll put their money to work for Canadians.
We're going to see now whether it really was government rules standing in the way of a building spree or whether red tape was just the most convenient excuse. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith wouldn't name who, but she said earlier this week that there is a proponent for a new West Coast bitumen pipeline ready to step up. The Premier of neighbouring BC, David Eby, has been maintaining there isn't a proponent like that pending. We're about to see who's right.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
This CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. 5 doctors at a hospital in St. John's, Newfoundland have resigned at the same time. CBC News has learned they tendered their resignation in a joint letter effective October 1st. It says their work environment has become unsafe for patient care and provider well-being, and that they will not be performing any other duties outside their contractual obligations beginning July 1st until their resignation date. The doctors make up the internal medicine department at St. Clair's Mercy Hospital. Doctors face specific challenges when it comes to the health of refugees and migrants. An annual conference in Halifax is focusing in on them. Physicians and nurses from all over North America will be there, but the Trump administration's approach to immigration is casting a shadow over the event. Shayna Luck has the story.
Adib Aryanson will do his hair carefully and put on his good suit this weekend when he delivers a talk to healthcare workers from around the world.
I think it's very important. And
he will talk about fleeing his home country of Afghanistan as a refugee. It wasn't safe for a young queer man after the Taliban retook the country in 2021. He crossed the border to Tajikistan, where the stress put him in hospital for a few weeks.
It was constant panic attacks. It was fear. It was just shock.
Some doctors at this 500-person conference say that fear is still following their patients.
They come into the office, they have increased stress, increased anxiety.
Dr. Catherine McKenzie teaches at Yale and treats refugee families. She's worried and saddened after the U.S. suspended refugee admissions and slashed their health programs.
Obviously, I'm a doctor. I want people whom I see as patients to be healthy, mentally healthy and physically healthy.
Conference organizers say they're seeing half the usual attendees because some delegates are afraid they'll be hassled on re-entry to the States. And they plan to publish a statement out of this conference showing support for refugees and migrants everywhere. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
An Israeli drone strike has killed at least 18 Palestinians in central Gaza. Casualties were brought to a hospital north of the attack site, according to a doctor and witnesses. The missiles were allegedly directed at members of a Hamas police force. They were confronting street vendors accused of selling stolen aid items when the attack occurred. It is not clear how many of those killed were police officers. The clock is ticking on Donald Trump's tax cut and spending bill. The U.S. president wants to sign it into law by July 4th.
If the bill doesn't pass, there'll be a 68% tax increase. Think of that, 68%, which would be the largest in history by about 40 points.
That is Trump speaking last evening at a White House event promoting the bill. But Congress may not meet the president's deadline after narrowly passing the House earlier this month. Trump's signature bill is now facing hurdles and opposition in the Senate. The CBC's Karen Pauls is in Washington. Karen, what is the delay?
There are disagreements between Republicans in the Senate. Some are up for re-election in next year's midterms, and there are concerns about the national debt and deep cuts to Medicaid. Here are Republican Senators Josh Hawley and Rand Paul.
We can't close rural hospitals. That's my message.
I'm fiscally conservative no matter who is president, and I just can't support something that makes the deficit worse.
Meanwhile, Democrats don't want to cut Medicaid and food stamps to offset trillions of dollars in tax breaks. This is Senator Chuck Schumer.
It is morally bankrupt to ask working and middle Americans to bankroll tax breaks for billionaires at a time
They're struggling to pay for groceries and rent.
Republicans have a slim majority in the Senate, and they'd like enough support for it to pass with a simple majority by tomorrow. But then it still has to go back to the House. They'll have to review all of the changes made, and they won't have a lot of time before they have to vote on it.
There is a Canadian angle to this as well. What is it?
Well, Ottawa has expressed concern about the so-called revenge tax of up to 20% on investors from countries deemed to be imposing unfair taxes on U.S. companies. There are suggestions a deal has been reached with the G7 exempting American companies from some specific taxes they don't like. So U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has asked Republicans to scrap that revenge tax from Trump's bill. Canada's finance minister welcomes the news. That's because it may help Ottawa with the incoming digital services tax, which hits companies like Amazon, Uber, and Airbnb. The first big payment of that DST is due on Monday, so you can bet Canadian lawmakers will be watching to see how this progresses in the next few days.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Karen Pauls in Washington.
Nothing changes except the red lights.
We hate to prove Winnipeg's The Watchmen wrong in their own hometown, but today, something is, in fact, changing at the red lights, specifically at Portage and Maine. The landmark intersection in Winnipeg is reopening to pedestrians. The city erected concrete barriers at the intersection more than 40 years ago that forced pedestrians to use an underground concourse. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Hi, I'm Sean. I was pro opening Portage and Maine, and it looks good. So we'll see how everyone adjusts.
And that adjustment begins at 10:30 this morning, the official reopening of Portage and Maine after 46 years to pedestrian traffic. I'm Marcy Marcuso. We're live outside the MMF building with Portage and Maine behind us, and people now coming down to have a look and take some selfies. We still have some barricades up here, just those temporary ones, and we still have some hoods over the walk signs, but that will all change later this morning. Thanks for joining us for our special coverage on this historic day. For some folks, reopening this intersection to foot traffic is a step in the right direction and signifies something bigger than just a new crossing. Stay tuned as we hear from some active commuters. Chloe Friesen is out live at Bonnycastle Park with a group of cyclists. Also, we're going to hear from a woman who has planned a reopening party to mark today. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for our news headlines this morning.
Good morning. Well, reopening Portage and Maine doesn't just affect pedestrians and vehicles. It's also going to impact businesses, especially those in the underground concourse. The owner of Stoneworks Bistro has been underground at Portage and Maine for 3 years. Mike Publicover says most of his customers come to him through the underground concourse, and he hopes his regulars continue seeking him out. Rural municipalities say emergency care is becoming a guessing game, and Doctors Manitoba warns it could get worse. They predict only 20 of 95 rural emergency rooms will be reliably open around the clock this summer. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather. Let's get into what's happening in the weather situation and with traffic. It's been busy with traffic.
I think we should start with traffic here, Marcy. Julie called earlier about the issues around the HSC between McDermott and Williams, causing issues there. We heard that that Tecumseh Street by the HSC is closed, so it might be causing issues if you're dropping someone off or you're a student going towards that area. Stephen also called saying at McPhillips and Insta, there's so much traffic there. It's pretty heavy. You need to take it easy as you approach that axis. And Chris said earlier, emergency vehicles blocking 2 lanes on, southbound after Confusion Corner towards Pemina by the seniors' home. So you want to take it easy there also. And then Marion and Goulet Streets, we hear that slow traffic backed up all the way towards Archibald there. That's from the traveling Transconian. You see more in traffic, let us know, 788-3093. And for weather, where it's going to be warm and humid, Winnipeg at 18. Most of the regions, Mercy, at this point already getting close to 19 degrees. Up north, we're seeing 16. It's going to be warm and humid today.
All right, thanks, Abby. Sorry to give you, I need to give you some space. Every time I turn my mic on, you can hear the traffic behind me. We are at 8:13 a.m. and just behind me now, there's a group of people that have gathered at the, at what's going to be the crosswalk across Portage and Main here, or the crossing rather, and just people having a look and getting ready to go. And some of the workers are now crossing, in fact, by foot traffic, and it is really sort of unusual to see. Eric Bignell is my next guest. We just pulled him onto the airwaves with us. He actually came down to Portage and Main on his bike this morning. Hi, Eric.
Good morning.
So you're normally on your bike. Would you bike Portage and Main in the past?
Not really, because the traffic was so crazy that it's a little bit dangerous, frankly.
Yeah. So where would you go? Would you like move a block up to?
I'll go to it's on Pioneer Avenue. I would cross there and then zip around through downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will this change how you use Portage Main as a cyclist?
Oh, definitely. I think it'll be way more friendlier to everybody, really, walking and on bikes.
How do you feel about it then? Are you happy about it reopening to foot traffic?
I love it.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to make a difference to the downtown? Because some are saying that this could be a really good thing for Winnipeg's downtown.
I think it's going to be. I think this is an excellent choice, an excellent decision, and I think that it's not only it's the heart of Manitoba. You know what I mean? And it's, for tourists coming to Manitoba, you want to be where all the action is and all the historical buildings and nice restaurants downtown. That's part of the action here, baby.
I love that. That's beautifully put. Portage and Main, the heart of Manitoba, not just the center of the city of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Thanks for going on the air with us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. A lot of people are dropping by just to weigh in. If you want to, too, before the end of the show, 788-3205.
Oh, Marcy, can you hear me?
Well, we just might have heard Chloe Friesen on the airwaves there. What a weekend for transportation use. Sunday, the city's implementing the biggest changes to how transit works in Winnipeg in more than a generation. Today, Portage and Main reopening to foot traffic. Some other active commuters are also pretty excited about the changes in crossing this intersection. So as you heard, Chloe Friesen is out and about this morning. She's actually at Gary and Assiniboine in front of Bonnycastle Dog Park. She's got a gathering of cyclists, I understand, from Bike Winnipeg. And yes, we certainly can hear you. How's it going over there?
It is fantastic. This is a bustling area. I am with the crew that makes up Coffee Outside. And if you folks want to say hello, good morning.
Everybody say good morning.
So that is just a large group, about 20 cyclists. It's come and go. I'm here with Ian McCausland, who started what's called Coffee Outside. He's also a board member of Bike Winnipeg and was part of the lobby to open Portage and Main to pedestrians. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning.
So before we get to how you're feeling about Portage and Main, let's start right here. Tell me about Coffee Outside. What is this group?
It's an initiative to bring a little sense of community to the average bike commuter. We're set up here at Gary and Assiniboine, which is arguably the most busiest spot for bike commuting traffic. And when you're commuting by bike, it can be a very solitary experience. It's kind of like you versus the world. So we thought, let's build a little bit of community where people can stop, have a cup of coffee, connect with other cyclists, and then carry on their day. And it seems to be taking off.
People are having a wonderful time here, just all smiles and a lot of caffeine, which is nice in the morning.
Yep.
Let's talk about Portage and Main. Well, how does it feel to know that today pedestrians can cross?
It's exciting. Like I mentioned to you earlier, it feels like the beginning of something special, not necessarily the end of a long struggle. It's part of a whole bunch of different initiatives. We're excited about the new transit network. We're excited about the redevelopment of Graham Avenue and now Portage and Main open to pedestrians. It's great that we're trying to revitalize downtown by making it just a little bit more accessible and walkable for people who choose not to use a car.
And it's been a long time coming. You've been working to open Portage and Main. What would you say to the folks who ended up voting no? 65% of Winnipeggers did. What message do you have for them today?
Well, I'm a Gen Xer, so I can speak to my fellow Gen Xers. I get it. Maybe you're living way out in St. Vital and you're not going to, ride a bike downtown or cross the street at Portage and Main. But we're in the middle of an affordability crisis. Talk to your kids. Or if you're a bit older, talk to your grandkids. They don't have the $14,000 a year to buy a car to get anywhere they want to work or anywhere they want to go. So we have to make this city a little bit more equitable for people who simply can't afford to buy a car or choose not to.
You mentioned that today it feels a bit like a beginning. Pardon me. Do you think this might signal something about active transportation and the city's kind of adoption of it in the future?
I know some of the people in the public service, they're doing tremendous amounts of work in terms of trying to build out our bike network. The biggest hurdle really is to have buy-in from the politicians. So we're going to continue to advocate for all users or all vulnerable road users, not just people on bikes, but people who choose to walk or use transit, and ensure that, the politicians understand that we have to just keep this going. This is not the end. This is the beginning.
Speaking of transit, big transit changes are coming in a couple of days here, end of the month. What are your thoughts on that?
It's surprising. The more time you spend on a bike, the more passionate you get about transit.
Why is that?
Because it's all about having choices that make sense for people. And, these 20 people behind me, the 40 people that come every week, if we didn't have a choice to ride a bike or we don't have a choice to ride a bus, what are we doing? We're jumping into a car. We're going to be in front of you. The congestion gets worse. So if you're having issues with traffic, you need more choices for more people.
Will you be heading to Portage and Maine later today?
Yeah, after we wrap coffee outside, a bunch of us are going to roll over there and take it all in.
All right. Well, I'll probably see you there. Thank you, Ian. That's Ian McCausland with Bike Winnipeg. And we'll send it back to you, Marcy, although I don't know. I kind of want to just stay and hang out here with all of these cyclists and the caffeine.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chloe, you might want to come back to Portage and Maine because now you've got quite a crowd gathering here.
Okay.
We've probably got a dozen people, and even though this is opening at 10:30, I don't know, they're already removing the barricades. So this is happening live behind us. The sandbags are being moved away. The orange barricades are coming across. They haven't yet taken those little hoods off the pedestrian crossing signals. So we'll see if, in fact, they're going to do this a little bit earlier for us this morning. People are all waiting to cross already, lined up. I think there's a lot of maybe there's a little bit of a moment that people are trying to gather and wanting to be first here, or at least among the first to experience this moment in history. My next guest on the show certainly is excited today and wanting to celebrate. Maureen Penyuk is actually having a Portage and Maine reopening party, and the party has made its way down here, so to speak, because she is here. She's wearing her Vote Open shirt. So you got a vintage shirt on, Maureen.
Does that make me vintage?
I don't think so. It means, though, in 2018 you were hoping that the vote would say reopen at that point, right?
Yes. Well, when we elected a mayor who part of his election campaign was that we would open Portage and Maine. So we were expecting it to be opened, and then disappointed when it didn't.
Yeah. How are you feeling today then?
Excited. I have to say I was almost thinking this wouldn't happen after that. So really happy to see it. As I sit here, it's quite something just to see the view that we've been deprived of for so many years. So just to be able to, we can't use the intersection just yet, but just to be able to sit here and see it and see what we've been missing kind of makes you realize what we have been missing.
It does feel, a lot of people will say, oh, they took the barricades down, but when you're right here and we're sitting on the sidewalk in front of MMF, it does really feel different. I'm just turning around here to have a real look. And look at these folks all lined up. Somebody, holding up a sign and taking a picture in the background. Tons of selfies. Dancing Gabe's been down here all morning long.
Yes, I heard him this morning.
What do you think the vibe is going to be like in Winnipeg? I mean, some people are saying it's just an intersection. Other people saying, oh, there's more going on here.
Well, and I think the idea is that we're now showing that we're creating space for people, not just for automobiles. I'm an able-bodied person, so for me, I had to go a block out of my way and then a block back every time I wanted to cross this intersection. So it was an inconvenience for me. I could do it, but it was an inconvenience, and you had to plan ahead. For people less able-bodied, much more of an inconvenience to get around, and so it makes it much easier, more convenient for us to cross. But it also sends the message that yes, the automobile doesn't have to take precedence over everything. It's a part of how we commute, but it's not the only way we commute. And so people walk, people bike, people take the bus, people drive. And this is to me, this is sending a message that people are important.
Are you actually hosting a reopening party today?
Well, and this is kind of going back to that disappointment that we had after the election in 2018 and then it didn't open. We were all set because when we heard it was opening today, and my initial thought was, oh, at what time? And then when we heard you were broadcasting live, we thought, hey, it'll be open. So then we thought, let's come here and we'll have a
big crowd,
a big opening party, and we've got some crew with us. But then, then we heard yesterday that it was closer to 10:30 that it was going to open. So it may not work for us, but I know there are a lot of people planning to be here for 10:30 for the opening.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, Maureen and I apologize, YouTube folks watching, because we got to turn around here and just do pure radio because there's stuff going on behind us here that is unexpected. So they actually have taken down all the barricades now. They're going on the south side of the street. They're going across, on the east side of Portage and Maine. They may be going across to do the other. They're cleaning up here. And did you hear that little cheer? As they were moving one of the orange barricades, this crowd here that's sort of impromptu gathered, besides taking selfies, just made a little cheer. And the crews are just sort of using, it looks like a leaf blower to kind of blow everything clear now of the debris.
Well, and we talked to some people as we came up here, and they kind of, the same as us, when they heard it was opening today, they just assumed when they got here it would be open. So there's anticipation and people kind of expecting that it would be open right from the start of the morning.
Yeah,
but we can wait a teeny bit longer.
What are you going to do when it's open? Are you planning a selfie yourself, or?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Maureen. Love having you on the air, and I appreciate that you dug out your shirt from 2018.
Thanks, Marcy.
Maureen Penyak, a Winnipeg commuter, has been advocating for a long time for the reopening of Portage and Maine to pedestrian traffic, and that, as you hear, and as we're seeing right now, is happening right behind us. The official opening is coming up here at 10:30 this morning, but we're going to actually play something here and then walk over to talk to some of these folks and see what's happening behind us live right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live at Portage and Maine with CBC on your Friday morning. It's beautiful out here, really lovely, as Abby has been saying. So the sun is now up. It's going to stay with us for most of the day. It actually is going to get quite hot. Right now it's 18 degrees. The winds are pretty calm, but it's going to be hot and windy in Winnipeg today. So sunny with a high of 27, the humidex 32, and then the wind's going to be south 30, gusting to 50 kilometers per hour. Well, earlier this week, CBC's Chloe Friesen checked out what some people were thinking about the upcoming reopening of Portage and Maine to foot traffic. And one of the people she caught up with, well, two of them, you've probably seen around here because they're Darren and Amy Uchin of Smokin' Bob's Hot Dog Cart.
We're here at your hot dog cart. Can you tell me about your business?
Smokin' Bob's. We're a mobile food business. Smokin' Bob's been out here for almost 35 years. So, we actually are not opposed to the crosswalks opening up because that's certainly going to bring a lot more walking traffic for sure. So for business, I think it'll be helpful for us for sure. No, it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds and how traffic moves along. It seems like it's a nice setup and it works for everybody. It looks like it makes it a lot more convenient for sure for people instead of having to go underground all the way around, up escalators, down, and it's just much easier that they can, businesses across the streets can now walk out the building and literally cross the street now. It's practical for people to walk around downtown, more practical for sure, and come out and get a great hot dog from Smokin' Bob's, of course.
Are you planning on needing more hot dogs?
Well, we hope so. I think that's what's going to happen, because I think more and more people will just gravitate to, using the crosswalks and walking downtown, and businesses will be busier. I can't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm reading the sign here, serving the best smoking in town for over 30 years. So 30 years in this business. How have you seen downtown change? How have you seen Portage and Maine change over the years?
Well, I mean, with COVID and everything, that what do you call it, remote work and from home, so that slowed down a lot of things downtown. But I'm noticing this year more people are downtown and going back into the offices, so it's populating downtown more with people, and so businesses are naturally going to do a little better with people walking around on lunch breaks and shopping and going out for lunches and things like that. So this year has been a better year for seeing more people downtown for sure. Yeah.
The city has been talking about revitalizing the downtown a lot. Do you think opening Portage and Maine will have a role in that?
Yeah, I think so, because people will come out of the offices. It makes it a lot more convenient, and when it's beautiful days and it's people like to go for walks, they're over the lunch hours, exercise, have lunches, or grab something from the stores, or I think we'll see a lot more walking traffic for sure over lunch hours and things like that.
To your point, Darren, it just makes it more convenient, because lots of times if I want to go, let's say, to Bailey's or Highs, I have to go all the way underneath the tunnels, right? So it just makes it a lot more convenient for people.
I don't know the plan on what's happening with businesses downstairs, unfortunately, but at some point over years and years and years, things naturally change, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles, if you want to say.
So that is Smokin' Bob's hot dog cart owners talking about the impending reopening of Portage and Maine, because that was earlier this week. But we're live down here, and I couldn't resist because I gathered a bunch of people together. There's a crowd of folks here now that have come for presumably the reopening of Portage and Maine, but they all have different thoughts on it. So why are you down here?
I'm just excited. I've been saving this shirt for 7 years, and I'm just excited to be able to walk across the street. We can see nothing crazy is happening with the traffic, and I'm just excited to be able to open up downtown.
Yeah, what's your name?
My name's Shawnee Madden.
Yeah, and how about you?
I'm Ryan, and I'm just excited to cross the street.
Yeah, how about you?
My name is August, and yeah, I'm just here to watch the opening.
Yeah, history, right? We're all here, history. How about for yourself?
Yeah, I'm Donovan. I was saying to these folks I was 9 when it closed. So I've been waiting 46 years for it to open. I'm super excited.
Do you remember? I was 5, so I have zero memory of it being open. But do you have? Do you have any memory?
It being open, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of excitement. Now I know that you have had a sign up, and this is about sort of people not forgetting the businesses below, right?
Yeah, we're super excited about it opening above and really encouraging the growth of downtown, but reminding people that we're still underground and we still have business down there, and we're really excited for the growth in general. But don't forget about us.
Yeah. What is your sign said? What's your business?
Empty Cup.
Yeah.
Our sign says still brewing 1 level down, so just reminding people to come visit.
Is it, how big of a worry is it today that, the excitement up top might not, the stress
really
down below?
Customers and people, really loyal customers, so we're not too worried, but a little bit of reminders are always helpful.
Yeah, we heard some of that. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, Portage and Maine. We'll do something super cheesy for the camera. 1, 2, 3.
Portage and Maine!
There, that's all I got. Thank you, guys. I know I pulled you over impromptu. Lots of crowds here gathering as we get ready for the opening, and already people cheating it just a little bit, but the official opening is at 10:30. Here now is Heather Wells and your CBC Local News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells. At 8:30, it is 18 degrees. It's going to be a humid day again, windy as well. Today's high is 27. The humidex, 32. After 46 years of subterranean scrambling and several months of road work, people officially will be able to walk across Portage and Maine above ground starting this morning. The first legal crossings begin in just 2 hours at 10:30 this morning. Gino DeStasio is a professor of urban geography at the University of Winnipeg. He says it was frustrating the barriers at Portage and Maine stayed in place for so long.
What is the big deal if this one extra intersection opened or closed in relation to the entirety of the complex transportation system and network that we've developed over the last 150 years in the city of Winnipeg?
A restaurant owner who is below ground at Portage and Maine worries how reopening the famous intersection will impact his business. Mike Publicover owns Stoneworks Bistro. He says most of his customers come to him through the underground concourse. He hopes his regulars will continue seeking him out, and he tells CBC's Marcy Marcusa on Information Radio it will be much more difficult.
Putting on parking boots and all that would change things. I would think that more people would use the meal delivery app, things and so on, and I don't use those, so
got it.
That could impact my business that way. And the catering aspect for me, getting the food over to the different towers.
And he hopes the city doesn't decide to close the underground mall altogether. Now, reopening that iconic intersection is expected to help all downtown Winnipeg. Public Works Chair Janice Lukes says it's part of a wider strategy to revitalize downtown.
We are really focused on downtown. We're really trying to put vibrancy and more people in downtown by accelerating housing, doing improvements to streets. And this is just one tool in the toolkit to make downtown more exciting.
The city made the decision to remove the barricades and install pedestrian lights after a report found it would cost $73 million to fix problems with the underground concourse. Well, bus riders, brace yourselves. Winnipeg Transit is about to change its entire route network overnight. On Sunday, buses will switch to a new system which the city says will offer more frequent service along major routes. Bjorn Radstrom is Transit's manager of service delivery.
The big thing is people need to understand where to catch the bus and which routes to take because everything is changing. By overhauling the entire route network, pretty much nothing is going to remain the same after Sunday.
With the new system, buses will come at least 10 to 15 minutes apart on regular routes. Rural municipalities say emergency rooms are becoming harder to count on. Doctors Manitoba expects only 20 of 95 rural ERs will be reliably open around the clock this summer. Glenboro South Cyprus Deputy Mayor Ed Bedford says that's not a surprise because staff are stretched thin.
I hate to say it, but it's kind of the reality of how things are nowadays. And I don't think you're ever going to see 24-hour ER service in the smaller places anymore. I don't think that, they just don't have the staff to do it.
This is the fourth summer Doctors Manitoba has issued a warning about ER coverage in rural parts of Manitoba. A Winnipeg cycling activist is disappointed by a proposal to put bike lanes on Wellington Crescent. A city report recommends the lanes be tested out from Academy Road to Stradbrook Avenue starting next spring. That is after the city gathers some feedback from area residents. Ian McCausland at Bike Winnipeg says it makes more sense to get that feedback after the pilot has been done.
With a little bit of political courage, they could install the pilot for this riding season. By the spring, then you could start to get a feel from the community on how the pilot program affects their day-to-day.
The bike lanes would be separated by plastic bollards and concrete curbs. The pilot would also lower speed limits to 40 kilometers an hour. Winnipeg's Scott Oake is being honored on Canada Day. The Governor-General has just announced 5 exceptional Canadians will be invested during a special Canada Day ceremony. Scott Oake, sports journalist and founder of an addiction recovery center in Winnipeg, is being recognized alongside the likes of actor Ryan Reynolds and singer Heather Rankin. The Order of Canada is one of the country's highest honors, recognizing people who have made extraordinary and sustained contributions to our nation. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Abby, let's have a last very quick look at weather and traffic.
Yeah, it's going to be 18 degrees at this time across the regions. It will be warm and mild. Everywhere would see warm and mild temperatures. Storms later. Highs will be hitting 27 today.
All right, it's been so much fun being out here at Portage and Maine today. Thank you so much for listening to our special broadcast on this historic day in our history. It's changed. I know some will be thinking it's just an intersection. Others will be thinking it's our intersection, and there's no denying that. So at 10:30 this morning, after 46 years, come on down and walk across, won't you, Winnipeg? Big thanks to the MMF. They were amazing. The Manitoba Métis Federation allowing us to be out here this morning. CBC Broadcasting in front of their building. Thank you so much to them. Also, big thanks to those that worked on the program this morning, especially Sierra Sanders and Chloe Friesen, Brad Lillies and Abby Adeyemi, Justin Dealey and Darren Bernhardt, who were down here helping out, and to our entire team in our current affairs unit at CBC Manitoba. Thanks for your work this week and each and every day. Take care, be well, Manitoba. Have a fantastic weekend. Good luck with those transit changes. This has been Information Radio live on Portage and Maine on CBC 89.3 FM.